Hello, everybody. Welcome to the show. It is Tuesday night, and we are just about a week away from one of the biggest days in franchise history. We are just barely over a week away from the always entertaining, always intriguing NFL draft, and we've got a few more things to talk about before we get there. A few more things to lay down. I am Brendan. That is Brandon of the Hawks Nest. How you doing tonight, Brandon?
I'm doing great, man. We are inside 10 days here. So the countdown has really, I think, fully officially began down here to the draft.
Yes,
So,
it has. Yes, it has. So, no real news, no real Seahawks news in the last couple of days. We released a couple players, but they were always going to get released. It doesn't really mean much. Like, I think we all knew that Connor Weddington was not going to make this 53-man roster. Only question was, when was he going to get released?
you're selling on Connor, man. I'm telling you, he's coming back. He's going to break into that starting lineup. It's just a matter of time.
Well, he was a XFL guy, so he left the XFL to jump on the Seahawks roster, and now he's already gone. That's kind of like maybe he made the wrong decision.
I guess so. He took the last donut when Pete was just about to reach for it.
Something. And the Rams did dump Allen Robinson in a pure salary dump today. They literally, honestly, I don't even know why they did it. They swapped seventh round picks and
Mhm.
agreed to pay 2/3 of his salary. It's like, I understand a salary dump, but like you didn't even really dump that much salary.
Yeah, it's hard to say from that standpoint of it. And then, like you said on the pick swap, you're not picking up anything extra from that standpoint of it. I think that they are certainly going to be committed to going very young this next coming year, and that Allen was never going to be a part of their plans into the future. And maybe there's a bit of this of doing right by the player and providing him a different place to where he can go productive and have a chance to maybe be with the winner. But you've got to me, I give Rams props on this, Brendan, because the fact that they're doing what I always say, which is know who you are and where your franchise is going to go. And if you're in it and you're in your window and it's the Super Bowl time, go for it. And if you're in a rebuild, go fully into the rebuild, lean into it, take the thing all the way down to the studs. And in my opinion, that's what you're seeing them pretty much do at this point.
All right. So, I mean, I agree with all that. It's just very odd to me that they couldn't get anything of actual value. Like they literally said, we'd rather not have you here than have you here, basically, all things being equal. They basically said that. So you usually don't see that. That's like something you might see in baseball.
It's true. It's a little bit unusual in that respect. That's why I do come to the thought process that maybe the players' feelings on this one. You're going to put me with Baker Mayfield. I just had this really rough first year with you anyway. And let's face it, it wasn't working last year with him there. They thought
Mhm,
it was going to be a lot better than it was. So it could be a little bit of just all of those kind of coming together as a confluence of reasons and then that driving it.
mhm. So I see no reason to not just swing right into these draft prospects. And we've got
Good.
a very interesting set of positions tonight. We're talking about the interior offensive line. The interior
Woo!
offensive line. We need some help one way or the other in there.
We do.
Um, you start with left guard. Left guard, you've got Damian Lewis, and he was really good last year. I got no problem with Damian Lewis, but he's in the last year of his contract.
Mhm.
Center, you've got Evan Brown. Good player. I think he'll be good for us. I think he'll be a big upgrade on what we had last year, but last year of his contract.
Mm.
And Phil Haynes, he might be all right. I'm not in love with it, but right guard, look, right guard's easy. It's not that big of a deal to have some dominant right guard as long as you're taking care of the other positions. Right guard is like the position you can kind of hide a little bit if you're clicking on the other positions.
Mhm.
But Phil Haynes is in the last year of his contract. So all of our starters could be gone in 2024. And beyond that, we got no depth right now. Our backup interior linemen are Greg Island, Jalen McKenzie, and Joey Hunt. So one way or the other, we need help.
We just can't get rid of Joey Hunt, can we?
Mm. I don't think he makes it to opening day as our backup center. I think he'll be practice squatting by then.
I hope not, because it's gonna be scary if he ever has to get on the field and
Mhm.
actually play some snaps.
Yeah.
It's gonna be
So
frightening.
we could use upgrades with the starters. We could definitely use upgrades with the backup. So one way or the other, we're going to have to seriously address this position in the draft because this is really the last opportunity to seriously address it with players that are worth talking about. So I propose we just start on the left side and work our way over to the right.
It's always the good way to go. It's natural.
Mhm. All right. So we are opening up with left guard. And with left guard, we are opening up with one of the best left guard prospects in a while. It's been a few years since we've had somebody this good, I think. It's Peter Skoronski of Northwestern. Now, understand, this guy played tackle in college. I'm aware of that. And some people are going to say, well, if he's a tackle, why aren't you looking at him as a tackle? Because there's no way he's going to play tackle in the NFL. And if he does, he's not going to be very good at it. So if he tries to, it won't last long. But I'll run through it real quick. Northwestern, 22 years old when the season starts, 6'4", 313 pounds, 32 and a quarter inch arms, 10-inch hands, 5'1", 640, 175, 10-yard split, 34 and a half inch vert, 9 foot 7 inch broad, 7.8 3-cone, 30 bench press reps. He's in the top 14 of every big board, in the top 10 of half of them, currently 13th on the aggregate. Was graded out extremely well in all areas by PFF last year, except for gap. He was just okay. Allowed 1 sack, 2 hits, and 3 hurries in a full season worth of work. So tell me about Peter Skoronski.
A guy that you see the guys that carry the 300 plus pounds and they'll carry it very easily and smoothly. You see other guys that carry 310, 15, and it just looks like they're just a big sack of potatoes out there, just kind of just bleh, bleh, moving along like a blob. This guy carries the weight really well. He moves laterally, fluidly. He can get up the field fluidly in space. So when you're talking about him potentially being moved to guard, which is what I think is going to occur, there's especially a very good cut up of him going up against Lucas Van Ness, where Van Ness just tractor trailers him and just, puts him right up on skates. And that's really what shows you, where you get a guy going up against him who's got 34-inch long arms on that outside, and they get a little bit of a build-up speed to go at him. He's kind of in trouble at that point. But you kick him inside now, where the contact has to be initiated post-snap much quicker, and that he's going to be more better to that. Specifically, I think, to the left guard. And of course, now being a tackle moving inside, he gives you the upward mobility stuff that you would love to see if you have a zone-based scheme and you're wanting to try to, do a lot of cutting, pulling and second level blocks and reach blocks. So he can hit all of that stuff. He also has pretty good functional power. He was a little bit better as a pass blocker than a run blocker. I would imagine if you went to left guard, you're probably getting a similar flip with him on that. But I think he could also play just about anywhere along the offensive line. He's a guy you go get that probably has a lot of flexibility. If in a snap you had to put him at left tackle, if in a snap you had to put him at right tackle for a couple of games because depth got you in a way or another, he might be able to hold up okay out there for those couple of games. So he does give you a lot of that versatility within it too. But I just thought everything pairs together really nice with him. There's not some gigantic flaw to him with his game. When it shows up, it's like that Van Ness situation where you just see him not having quite the length to stay inside there with this is why length matters, when the guy can get his hands on you before you can get your hands on them, and they've got a chance to get a full running start before they get in India, it leads to troubles for you. It always kind of puts you behind the 8 ball as a tackle.
Yeah, when I was evaluating him, and I evaluated him purely as a guard, I really couldn't find anything wrong with him. Like, I can't say anything bad about him as a guard. Like, the only con that I listed with him was if a team views him as a tackle and drafts him as such, then he might get a little overdrafted. But even that, not really, because he's still going to be a top 10 pick, I think, almost for sure. I think he's definitely going to go somewhere in that top 10. I don't think he gets past the Bears. I think the Bears are probably going to get him if he's still there. If
Makes a lot of sense.
we might trade back to number 8 and get him. I don't think that's impossible. We could trade back around there. And well, yeah, I just couldn't really find a flaw with him. The only flaw with him is positional value. How important is a left guard compared to all the other positions out there? That's the question.
Well, especially when you're also paired and you got the good floor on him. And so what's that worth also in on that equation? I will say, if the Seahawks want to take a step towards making their offensive line not merely good enough, but dominant for this foreseeable future, you trading back and going with Skoronski and then coming back second, third round with one of these centers that we're going to talk about. That's a pretty good pairing. It's a pretty good setup. Not to mention bringing in Skoronski might have them open the door back to moving just Lewis over to the right side rather than Skoronski move, depending on their outlook on it.
I would be shocked if we didn't move Lewis back to right guard if we got Skoronski. Like,
I would too. I would
yeah,
think that would go down that way. But I'm a big proponent of building a dominant offensive line, not merely good enough. If there's two things that I can build with an eye towards dominance on this team, it's not running backs, not receivers, not tight end. It's give me a dominant offensive line and give me a dominant pass rush. I can put those two things together, and I think I can build a really fine football team. And this guy would be, as much as any player, with your first step out the gate, a real solid punch into that direction.
yeah. So I couldn't quite get to the point where I'd be okay taking him at 5. I couldn't do it. If we take him
Mm-mm.
at 5, I'm gonna be pretty down on that, I think. But if you traded back to like 8, I think I would at least be okay with it. That's where I landed on Skoronski.
Yeah, I think 8 on would be okay. By that point, you're looking at Anderson, Carter, Wilson off the board. So, if you're not looking to want to take a cornerback there, I mean, it's as good as any other pick as you're getting into that selection point, I think.
Yeah, I just couldn't quite get there at 5. And like, there's really nothing he could do about it. Like, if I were to sit here and say, okay, if Skoronski did this or that, I would be okay with him at 5. No, there's really nothing he can do about it. It's just like Quentin Nelson went 6th overall, right? And I don't think Skoronski's quite as good a prospect as Quentin Nelson. I could be wrong, but I don't think that he is.
No, I think Nelson gave you physical dominance from the position, and the other part of this is that he hasn't played at technically the position he's going to at the NFL level. So you're really going to be rare that you're drafting a guy even top 8, frankly, when you intend to at the next level be moving him to a different position.
Do you think he might be able to play a center? Do you think he might
Hmm.
end up landing at center, Skoronski?
He could, yeah. I definitely
Hmm.
think it's possible there. It kind of depends on what scheme he goes to and what team wants to do what with him. I think that there's going to be a zone team to me that would want to latch on to him most. The Bears make sense because they have problems all over the place as far as their offensive line is concerned. So they have a lot of holes. He could just wherever he ends up settling into will be fine for them because they have so many. That's why that connection makes a lot of sense to me. But I think he can play anywhere. I do think he could. I think even at right tackle, he could kind of hold up for a second there. Again, I think eventually he gets exposed to tackle either way, but right guard, left guard, center. He's truly a guy that can play each because he's got enough power at right guard to hold up, and he can do any of the movement based stuff you need. He can, he's a smart player. He will adjust to wherever you got to kind of set him off to. So I feel very good about him being a fine football player. He may not get to stardom, and maybe you were looking for that if you want top 10 is more of that stardom feel. But I get it. But this is a draft with not a lot of certainty too, and not a lot of guys that you feel super uber clean about picking in this top 15.
Yeah, yeah. I think he would start day one. I think he would
Mhm.
start day one if you brought him in,
Absolutely.
right? Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So that's Skoronski. Let's move on to the other likely top 100 left guard. There's one other guy that I found who I think is going to go in the top 100. It's Cody Mock. Cody
Mhm.
Mock of North Dakota State, 24 years old, 6'5", 302 pounds, 32 and 3/8 inch arms, 9 and 3/4 inch hands. Ran a 5.0840, 179 10-yard split, 29-inch vert, 9-foot broad, 7.333 cone, 4.55 10-yard split, 29 bench press reps. These guards, these interior linemen can lift.
Oh yeah.
So they got that going for him. Big boards, a little all over the place, mostly in the second round, though. He's currently ranked as like a late second round pick on the aggregate. Last year, he graded out actually a little better than Skoronski, like a 92 PFF grade, 91 against the pass, 82 against the, I'm sorry, 91 against the run, 82 against the pass. Interestingly enough, he graded out much better in gap opposed to zone, even though I think most people believe he is a zone guard at the end of the day. So that's
Yeah.
kind of interesting. But Cody Mock, what was your read on him?
Um, well, definitely isn't surprising he might have graded out better because certainly his level of competition is a little bit easier for him versus Skoronski at Northwestern and just a little bit of a smidge there between them. But they are kind of similar in my outlook of them as both players. I don't think he's a left tackle at the next level. I think he's a guy that provides a lot of versatility in being able to move him around on that offensive line wherever you see fit. Um, and so I think he could fit, you can go left. He might be a guy who ends up at center being his best position. I think he's going to play. I know it's that old cliche of he's going to play 10 years in this league, but both with him and Skoronski, it's like I feel like these guys are going to play 7 to 10 years in this league and be solid to above average players minimum. That's kind of what you're getting. I think he's more of a late second rounder because the dominance isn't as a little bit more as assertive as it will be with Skoronski. I think, for instance, as a pass protector at a guard position. I don't think any three techs are licking him off the ball. He'll be able to handle that. I like this kid in the way that he can root down, get his hands in the right position. He can get kind of thrown off a straight, and then he can correct himself and fix it. So if things go bad in a play, he comes back around and finds a way to kind of get himself into the right spot. His feet are really active. He was 220-pound guy coming into college there who put on all the weight that he put on, the 300 pounds, but he moves still very much like a guy that's 250-ish almost is how he moves. So another guy like Skoronski too, where you're going to move him, but then you're not looking for really like a power-based scheme or a mano-a-mano based kind of blocking scheme. And most of these offensive schemes all have little parts of zone and man, but you want him really in a zone-based deal. So like our offensive line would be a good fit for him in that respect, in that he's going to be able to do all the mobile stuff. You watch him get to second level blocks, and there's some differences there between him and Skoronski. I think he's a little more pure power to him than Skoronski's a little more, maybe let's call it finesse. But he's got they got some little echoes of each other, even in the things that are plus and negative to them. And even overall as a player, but he's just a little bit deeper around. You get the level of competition with him versus Skoronski. And then again, I think Skoronski, I'm just a little more sure of that he's going to hit that spot, but you love Cody, man. He gives you a guy that probably starts day one, probably also a guy that can play multiple positions for you throughout his time here. And not again in the way, Brendan, you and I have harped on this. We're not talking about the Ethan Posick way here, right?
Right.
Let's be clear. When I talk about these guys playing multiple positions, it's not that he's a pure center that I'm going to force to guard. It's that he has that fluidity to be able to play and feeling comfortable in being able to play those multiple positions.
Right. I agree. He played left tackle at North Dakota State, right? Yeah. Okay.
That's right.
All right. So I don't know if he'll be able to do that at the pro level, but I do feel like he'll be a really good guard. The main difference between him and Skoronski is that I feel like Mock can get out-muscled from time to time. I feel like he does occasionally get bullied. Like if you try to get him up against one of these bigger defensive linemen, he could get pushed around a little more than Skoronski. That's how I kind of felt about it. And little more penalty concerns maybe than Skoronski as well, if I had to also find another place to criticize. But I would definitely say he's the by far second best left guard in the class. If he's there in the mid or late third, I'd do it. I don't feel bad about that at all.
And voted a key thing on this one too was during Senior Bowl week, because he was a guy playing at South Dakota State. So when you saw him go up against the competition being a little bit tougher now at the Senior Bowl week, he was voted, I believe, by the equivalent defensive lineman as the best lineman of the week at a Senior Bowl.
Yeah.
So I thought that was interesting, because that's those guys when they go small school, going to Senior Bowl, they're ones that you're really paying attention to on how their performance level goes, because of that fact that they don't, you're not sure if you trust their South Dakota tape quite so, clearly.
Okay. So that is basically it for the day one left guards, in my estimation. I don't think there are going to be other players who maybe end up playing left guard who go in the top 100, of course. Like for all we know, Paris Johnson Jr. ends up at left guard. But the way that I'm looking at them, I think we're now down to the day three guys.
Yeah, agreed.
All right. So let's just keep this train on moving with Nick Broker. Nick Broker, Ole Miss, 22 years old, 6'4", 305 pounds, 32.5-inch arms, 9 3/4-inch hands. Pretty slow at the combine, 5'2", 740, 184, 10-yard split. 4.72 20-yard shuttle, which is one of the slowest times I've ever seen on a 20-yard shuttle. But most of the big boards have him around like the 4th or 5th round. The aggregate currently has him in the 5th. Didn't grade out terribly well on PFF last year, but pretty good as a pass protector and pretty good in zone. Didn't allow any sacks, 13 QB hurries. How did you feel about Nick Broker?
Broker's a guy that I really liked a lot, and it seems like there's these other metrics out there though that should be telling me that I shouldn't like him as much as I do on the tape. Be it PFF or just his testing numbers that you brought up. But when I watched him, I saw him in this offense really being utilized with the mobility stuff quite often. Like they kind of centerpieced him this way, where it was a lot of the pullback across the formations. And when I see this stuff on these offensive linemen, getting to the second level, lead blocking through and combo blocking off one, sliding to the next block, he was really adept at that and comfortable with it. And so many of these guys on tape just aren't. They get off balance. They fall on their face. They can't land the block right. They'll get to the spot, but then they'll whiff on the block. But even though he doesn't have the mobility as far as his testing numbers go, he could move on the tape I watched. He was doing it well. And I know PFF was dinging him, but at the same point in time, I wasn't watching him, get beat up kind of like that with what you might take away from the grade and what they did that. I thought he does a really nice job with both of his hands of always striking both hands at the same time, which then increases the power. You sometimes get it's like a drummer, do-doom, do-doom, where some guys, so their power, gump, bump, and then you lose a little bit of your power when you do that. But if you can hit both hands at the same time, it's like you're getting that force of them both going at once. And it sort of increased his power a bit as well when he was really drive blocking and getting up the football field. I thought, even though he doesn't test well on this, pulling in space, moving out and around, he's really comfortable. And we're going to want our linemen to do that, especially for a later round guy. You might find yourself here actually a really solid starter later on in the rounds, fourth, fifth round. But I do like him, I think, a little bit more than any of the boards on this one. This is probably, I don't love him, but I definitely like him, I think, more than some of the others that are out there.
Yeah, I found that he does seem very comfortable working in space. Again, he is slow, but sometimes your speed doesn't necessarily mean you can't work in space. Sometimes working in space is also about being able to hit a moving target.
Yeah. And
So, yeah,
getting out of your snap, getting out of your stance.
right. So the main issues I saw with him were just the fact that he's not that strong. He gets bull rushed a little bit, can struggle to sustain blocks. Probably just needs to spend a little bit of time in the weight room. So he's going to take some time, but I feel like he could develop into a starter. I'd take him in the 5th round and be perfectly happy with that.
Yeah. I'm good even going fourth at 20th where we picked
Mhm.
there, but I definitely think this guy's got league in a draft with not a lot of starting left guards, really, in my opinion. Here's one that I think is a guy that will find his way to probably starting in this league. If he goes the right system, obviously.
Right. Right. I feel like teams are getting a little bit smarter with making sure they put
Oh,
players
yeah.
in a position to succeed lately, except for maybe quarterbacks. I think quarterbacks are just like, well, you hope that they get it right, but you still have really bad teams taking quarterbacks high in the draft and then not building the team around them really.
I agree with that. Yeah, you certainly still see that happening there. No doubt. I was
Right.
trying to think if there was another position. Because I was just thinking, was there other ones we see him? And you're right that basically people were put in the position to succeed in the spot that they should go at that point. It's hard. I can't remember what recent prospects have been like, oh, they got this guy and they moved him over here. That was happening. Remember with Minka Fitzpatrick back 7 years ago at Miami. It's what caused him to do the trade because they couldn't find this role for him. But teams are getting better, a little headier on that. It seems like.
Right. Okay, another interesting guy here. We've got Braden Daniels of the Utah Utes, 23 years old, 6'4", 294 pounds, 33-inch arms, 9 3/4-inch hands. Ran a sub 540, so he tested fairly well, 1.7, 110-yard split. Not very explosive with his jumps, but not the end of the world for an offensive lineman. Sports Illustrated loves this guy. They have him going in the early 3rd. The other big boards, though, kind of come together with him around the 5th, which is where he is in the aggregate. Graded out pretty decently last year. Pretty effective with the run and pass blocking, good in zone, and didn't allow any sacks and only 1 QB hit on the year. So Braden Daniels, give me the 4.11 on this guy.
Well, in the tape that I watched of him, he was playing, I believe, on the outside. So they had him at left tackle.
Yes.
And I believe he played there most of the year. We're not going to do a lot today outside of a couple of these guys. And the reason we're doing it is because this is what we're hearing. This is what's being very well understood about these guys, Peter Skronsky, Cody Mock, and this guy as well, which is that we're not trying to make the guessing game of if a tackle can be a guard. This is what we're being instructed of where these guys are going to go. And those guys have their separate reasons, Brendan, for you look at them going, well, that's why they're going to go to guard. This guy, to me, when I saw him sink down in his pass set, I went, oh yeah. And I've never kind of quite seen anything like it with the left tackle, because he gets his hips sunk so deep, and they tell the tackles to sink your hips. You don't want them upright, standing up high, and then the rusher can get up under their pads. You want them there in that strike point to where they're in that sort of athletic position to go. But he gets he gets down here like this really low, and he's off the snap every low. And I just kept looking at it going, boy, he's just a natural, real true bend leaner that just needs to go into guard. Like, that's where his spot will be in, because it does get him into trouble where guys get their contact and get him too low, and then they can slide off and get around him. And I saw a lot of blocks on tape where he would get the initial block, but then the guy would just kind of bound off the block really easily, because he's not in that sort of comfortable strike position. He's like trying to do the Mamba while he's trying to get his block laid down. And I don't know why. It's again, real weird technique. I don't see a lot of others, and it's good that he's got that dexterity. It'll help him out when he goes to guard. But he's got really tremendously long arms. I had hoped 3 inch long, so at least good size for what you like there. But I also thought his power was missing a little bit. He hits the point, he gets the strike point, but then you see the guys don't, he gets pushed back. He doesn't really do the pushing. So I do worry a little bit about his power going into guard, which is going to be what probably pushes me down the list with him a little bit. But the athletic stuff, he's got all that, Brendan. You know what I mean? All that's definitely hemmed up as far as he's.
By the way, according to my research, he actually played left tackle, left guard, and right guard in college. He moved all over. So
there we go. So he's done it all. I mean, and I didn't dig deep to find the left guard tape on him, but I could see how he could do it. And maybe that's why he was doing the low stand stuff, is he's been so used to recently doing the guard stuff that he's just gotten into that. It's hard to teach, muscle memory, or unteach muscle memory, I guess, which would make sense.
I liked him a lot. Actually. I think he's a really great athlete. I think he's going to fit perfectly in this offense. I think he would develop into a starter. I think, he's another guy, just hit the weight room for a little bit, just like Charles Cross needed to. So I'm not that worried about that element of it. I would make a pick on him anytime in day 3. I think he would. I wouldn't hate him in the 4th round at all.
Yeah, I think that's, I believe, right in the spot where I've got him as well. So, yep, agreed. Right. That's exactly my area for him. So I think he'll be a good pro in his own scheme too.
All right, we got 2 more guys. Not a lot of left guards going around these days. Not a lot of true blue left guards.
No.
And this is not just a this year problem. This is an every year problem.
Oh yeah. It's hard to find them, man. They gotta be able to hold up against those 3 techs, handle 3-4 defensive ends, move in space. It's a lot.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so the next guy I found who caught my attention was Ryan Hayes of the Michigan Wolverines. 23 years old, 6'6", 298 pounds, 32.5-inch arms, 10-inch hands, ran a 5.18 40, 178 10-yard split. He didn't even he barely broad jumped 8.5 feet, which is one of the lowest I've seen on the broad jump. But Sports Illustrated loves him. They have him in the 3rd, but the aggregate has him in like this early 6th, I believe. Graded out well last year overall. He graded out well in pretty much every category from PFF. Allowed 8 hurries, 3 hits, and 0 sacks last season. Mm-hmm. So he played well for a Wolverines team that was very, very good. And did you get a read on Ryan Hayes at all?
Yeah, another guy that is on this list of guys that played tackle last year that's going to be going to guard, but this is where people are telling us he's going to go. So I think he gives you pretty good movement stuff. The broad jump's a little disconcerting at 103, of course, but on tape, he moved well enough. He's not really quick. He's going to get to the spot. So that matches up to the testing numbers, I think, a little bit there. I think other than his base getting a little bit wide, his fundamentals are really clean. Kick steps good, gets out there to the edge, meets the guys, uses his length as good as he can. He's only got 32.5-inch arms. This is why I think he's going to go a little bit more into the inside when it's all said and done. He didn't get overwhelmed by that, by the way. I didn't see him like Skoronski at times on tape. You saw him get beefed up on the long arms. I didn't see it as much on the tape I saw with Hayes, though he does get a little just lost on the power game. He definitely gets, he'll get the jostle back thing at times when it comes to just mano-a-mano. He's a little stiff, a little robotic for me. I think he'll get the job done kicking inside to guard, but I do think I'd probably like him a little bit less than some of these other guys. I'd have them in their kind of spot, and then him in another spot down below on this one.
And that's kind of interesting because Michigan is like a power run team, right?
Hmm.
So you would expect him to be a little more well equipped to do power stuff. Um, he's one thing I noted about him was it felt like he was slow off the snap. He's one of those guys who feels like his hand is out of the dirt last on a
Hmm.
lot of snaps. But he uses his frame and his strength to bully and run blocking. He's pretty decent in space. He's got good handwork. He's somebody who plays hard until the whistle blows. I ended up landing on like a sixth rounder with him, and I don't know if he'd be a great fit here. There's some stuff in his athletic profile that makes me wonder, but I put like a sixth round grade on him.
Yeah, I'm in the same place, and I have those same concerns with him. It just there's something. Uh, it just it's almost there, right? It's almost there with it, but we're looking to me right now, and maybe it's our own eyes on this rather than the organization's eyes. But our eyes, as we look on this, is to try to find the stuff that you're trying to fit for what you're trying to run in the scheme and what your offensive line coach would ideally like. That's all we're trying to apply to this. And if there's things that they're missing in a physical skill set necessity, which is the movement. And I know I harp on it a lot and you harp on it, but we're not the mano a mano homegrown old offensive lines and we're just going to take it hat on hat and put it to you. This is now we're going to have guys moving lateral. We're going to try to get a numbers game to one side of the football field with our linemen pulling in space. So we've got to have the guys that can everything that you need them to do from a mobility standpoint, they can do and then look good doing it. And even maybe, dare I say at times, be able to offer some dominance in being able to do it. He's not going to give you that. He'll get the job done. It's a Brandon, this is a burger at 2 a.m. after you leave the bar, like it tastes pretty good right now. It's going to get the job done. It's going to fill you up, but the next morning you're not going to feel great about it.
Yeah, yeah. I always had that reaction with like Taco Bell. That was the thing. Like, I know
Yeah.
I'm going to regret this really badly
Yeah.
later. Which is, I actually don't even eat Taco Bell, but there's certainly other foods that I do eat that I know like this is not something I'm proud of.
Yeah, it's like you're both enjoying it and going, "Oh Lord,
Yeah.
this is gonna hurt."
All right, we got one last guy here, and I think people are going to be pretty familiar with this guy. This is a Washington Husky, Jackson Kirkland of the Pac-12, hopefully champions this year, Washington
Ooh,
Huskies.
let's go.
Really good, impressive offensive line they put together the last couple of years, and he's been a stalwart of it, moving around a little bit. He's already 25 years old, so he's one of the oldest prospects in this draft. 6'7", 321 pounds, 33 and a half inch arms, which is credible. 33 and a half inch arms. That's pretty nice. 10 and a half inch hands. Only thing he did at the combine was bench press, and he did 19 reps. Most of the big boards have him around the fifth or sixth. He's currently in like the late fifth in the aggregate. He graded out well in all aspects of PFF grading: overall, run, pass, zone, gap. Allowed 0 sacks, 2 hits, and 7 hurries last year on Penix. I think he missed one game. So, how do you feel about Jackson Kirkland making that transition from the college game to the pros?
I'm probably right on with where that Mark had him at as far as the placing in. I think I might even have given him a bit of a 5th round grade. Just checking my grades on him, just because. Nope, I did 6th, 7th.
Mm-hmm.
I put it in there as well. I watched him last year, Brendan, because there was some wonder if thought that maybe he was going to come out. I think last year. And so, the Hutchinson tape with Michigan last year, he gave it to him on the outside. Obviously, not a tackle by any measure. He can move. He can do the stuff you need from a requirement standpoint within our scheme. So he hits those points of it. I think he is vastly missing power. I think he's a shield and a shoulder pad rider. You know what I'm saying? Get up on the shoulder pad and then just kind of ride him around, ride him rather than
Yeah.
you're dictating the action. You're just kind of always trying to, or shield, getting yourself just in front of the defender between you and the ball carrier. There's a lot of that in his game, which again works in the scheme because this is what the scheme does have you do. So that's okay. That stuff does kind of work, but I don't get tremendously excited for his upside because of it on the other end of that, because I don't think it's just a weight room thing here, Brendan, too. I think with this guy, there's a little bit of a lack of just functional power on the football field. I think you've been right on the guys you said we get him in the weight room. Yes, those guys have some functional power. They just need to get stronger. With him, sometimes there's just that lack of just functional power. It's almost all being done by just being technically clean and being in the right position.
Yeah, I wrote, I think he's a technician. I think all that playing experience he built up at UW has been great for him. He gets the job done when he's on the move. He does have that length, which is maybe going to make some people think he can play tackle at the NFL. I doubt it. But my main hang up with him was just he's so tall. He's always going to lose leverage.
Yeah.
He's always going to lose that leverage battle because he's just so tall. He's, like you said, a little bit on the weaker side. He's been injured a few times in his career already, so there's not a super clean injury history there. It just feels like he's kind of low upside, but I feel like he's an NFL caliber backup.
Mhm.
I said sixth round on him. I said sixth round.
Yeah, I'm in that same spot with him. I think he could. You're right. This guy that might still be able to bang around the league for a few years. But I think your point about the being the 6'6" is correct. Is that he feels high. He's playing tackle a lot, so he's gotten used to getting high. And then this is when making that transition. Do you have these other guys we talked about? Might be more 6'3", 6'4" ish. They can get down and get a little lower. But with him, he really the bottom line with him is he needs to be better as a tackle. He needed to be better as a tackle. With his
Right.
length and his size, that's where he should have been able to be rounded out at.
hmm Yeah, I wrote down that he's going to be good at like combo blocks and stuff like that, where
Oh
he's
yeah,
double teaming. Yeah, stuff like that, but nothing over the top there. Let's see here.
he'll hit his marks.
Mhm. Yeah. Jonathan, thank you for the $2. Thoughts on Steve Avila moving to center? Yeah, that's always the hard part of evaluating offensive linemen. You don't know where they're actually going to end up playing. And Avila's another guy who people talk about as a center. Very possible.
I watched a bit of his center snaps when doing my scouting on Avila, and Jonathan, I was more comfortable with him at guard. But at the end of the day, and we'll hit him, I'm sure, in a second. But I come to the same sort of lukewarm conclusion on Avila that I landed on Osiris Torrance. They're not bad players. Osiris Torrance, top rated PFF, guard in the game. Just I can't fade the funk or lie about if I don't quite see it on tape, especially for this fit to this scheme in this system. And Avila is a big man mover. I mean, he's a big man, but does he fit? Even being that he'd be a right guard here to what we need for that mobility stuff, I don't think he does. If this was Carroll in 2015, hell yeah, brother. But the Waldron scheme, I don't know. I don't think
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, we will talk about Avila and Torrance a little bit later, but I'm inclined to agree with those thoughts. I was not impressed, and I don't get it. I don't get it with either of those guys. Not where you'd have to spend the pick to get them.
Exactly. Cost is high in both those two guys.
hmm All right, so now we're going to do center, and I think this is one that for a long time the Seahawks literally did not have a center on their roster this offseason. So everybody was all up about center. Everyone was super into the center stuff, and I think they still should be because Evan Brown, nice player. We got him on a great contract,
Mhm.
but could be a one and done. And we know that Carroll has shown resistance in the past to playing rookie centers. So odds are very good. We're going to draft a guy this year who we anticipate is going to be the center of the future in 2024 and beyond.
Mhm.
So I think every center in this class is on the table as a selection.
I would agree with that. Yeah.
Okay. So we're going to kick things off with the guy who is basically the consensus number one center on every big board. Not quite a generational center prospect, but he is the closest thing that we have in this class. It is John Michael-Schmitz of the Minnesota Golden Gophers, 24 years old, 6'3.5", 301 pounds, 32.5-inch arms, 9.5-inch hands. Did not test well, which is something we've spoken about before. Ran slow, did not jump well at all. 20-yard split was nasty, 4.56. He did do some decent bench press reps, I guess, but wasn't able to launch himself up the boards with that combine performance. He's in round 2 of most big boards right now. I think he's 54 on the aggregate. Graded out phenomenally well from PFF, though. They had him in the 92 range in zone, in run blocking, allowed all of 5 hurries combined last year. So John Michael-Schmitz, let's talk about him for a second here.
Well, there's some players, there's always a collection of them in every single draft that I think, can look beyond what testing numbers are showing you. And that if you see a certain level of dominance on tape, that you should let that be your guiding light and what you walk away from. We do not want to let the testing numbers be that which gets us lost in the forest. We want it to provide us a pathway through the forest. And so while the numbers are bad from testing wise, you're not going to get better, cleaner tape of any center prospect in this draft than John Michael-Schmitz. He is lightning fast out of his stance, which is stuff that helps him offset maybe some of those, testing numbers of quickness, because he'll be the fastest guy up out of the on the line. He does everything you need a center to do: double bleeding blocking, combo blocking, and does it well. He really will torpedo into guys off the line in double team blocks and really set that first block in there before he gets down. He doesn't just do the job, does the job really well, and then gets on to the next. Pulling in space, all of that stuff, completely comfortable. He's got a kind of forearm shiver clothesline move that he does to blitzers that just completely puts guys just to sleep. Just boom, now you're done. You're not moving any further. You're going to stop right there, right there. And he has an understanding of how to play the position, a feel for it, how to pick up blitzers, how to pass guys off, how to pick guys up. He can go one-on-one against zero techs if you need to, and he's strong enough to be able to root down against them. I feel like he is a very clean prospect, and a prospect I very much know what I'm getting. Not going to maybe be a star, but what I do is I look at him as like the Uno card of Creed Humphrey. Creed Humphrey was a really clean prospect who didn't test well, who was really good in pass protection, but wasn't maybe as quite strong as a run blocker. This guy's better as a run blocker, who's and does it same way, clean, refinement, all that stuff, technically brilliant, but then maybe not quite as masterful as a pass protector.
Yeah, I think that's all very fair. And, there is definitely going to be some memories of the Creed Humphreys fiasco when this guy's up on the board, especially if we don't take him. But
especially if we don't take him with the second round pick. It's in that same spot and he drops and he's there.
Yeah. But obviously he's a great center. He's got a great frame. He's very smart with handling blitz call outs and, doing the play calling for the offensive line. Great there. Really good picking up blitzes as well. He's powerful. He's got a good anchor, great lateral mobility for reach blocking. I think he can do that stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Very consistent. That's the one thing that stands out about him. It's hard to find bad reps from him. I remember Jared Stanger tweeting about that during the college season. He was like, every rep looks the same from him. It's just so clean and good. So I can't take any of that away from him, but he's not a good athlete. If you ask him to cover ground, you ask him to play at the second level, it is going to be trouble. And I'm like, okay, when I look back at the 2021 draft with the Creed Humphrey draft, he was kind of the only real center in that class, it almost felt like, right? Like after him, it was Andy Dickerson, who still hasn't actually played center at the NFL level. He's always been a guard, although part of that is because he's playing with Jason Kelsey. And I can't even remember if there was another big-time guard prospect in that draft, center prospect in that draft. So I think that was part of the disappointment. It was like either you draft Creed Humphrey or you don't have a center in this draft.
Mm-hmm.
I feel a little differently about this class. So I feel like you could get another center who isn't quite as good, but is really good and a better fit for what you're trying to do at a later pick. So as time went on, the more I looked at Schmitz, the more I was like, I wouldn't be against taking him, of course. He's going to be a great player, and he'll find a way to help you win, even in his own scheme. But I've also found myself kind of thinking, like, I think we can do better.
Did you feel like on tape, though, that I know that, let's take the testing numbers out for a second. Did you feel like on tape that you were seeing a guy who wasn't moving good in space, that wasn't getting to those blocks?
I think you can find guys who do it much better than him. I do feel like watching it. Like, I felt like his technique in open space was a little bit questionable. The quicker linemen do seem to give him at least a little bit of a problem. Not that you're going to find a ton of guys as a center who are quicker linemen that you're going to have to contend with. It's not certainly not the end of the world. But don't get me wrong. If he's there with our second round pick and we take him, I'm going to be very happy with that, because we're finally taking that position seriously for the first time since we drafted Ethan Posick. Yeah. And look, I'm assuming that before you draft any offensive lineman, you went to your offensive line coach, who is Andy Dickerson now, and you went to Shane Waldron, and you're like, how do you feel about this guy? Those guys are not going to show up to the VMAC in a month and be like, okay, who's my new offensive lineman? They're going to be part of that process. And they're
100%.
going to look at that player and feel like, yeah, I can work with that. So I'll go with it.
And I'm okay waiting later too. I do think you're getting a certainty here, almost not certainty, but I feel almost a near certainty. You're getting a top 10 center in this league. Maybe he's not in the top three, top four, top, maybe he's number 8 in this league in a couple of years. But I think that
Hmm.
that's what you get a guy that's going to settle down into when it's all said and done. The brass tacks, bottom line, and result. That's what I think he's going to be, whoever he goes to. And I don't have that assurance as much about some of these later guys. I like them. I think they'll be okay players, but I don't have just quite as much of that certainty there with them.
Yeah. So again, a little bit of a weird one, and I've definitely gotten some people in the comments that are like, "Okay, you're comparing him to Creed Humphrey, and you're saying we shouldn't take him. Are you crazy?" And I get it, right? I get it. I totally understand it. But at the same time, I have to be like, we could use that second round pick on something else and then use the third round pick on a center who maybe even fits us better. Like I got to
It's
balance all these things.
we'll get to a couple guys here that are definitely right along your train of thought that would fit into that standpoint. I don't think it's silly at all, and I don't think it's out of it completely makes sense.
And also, he's pretty old already. He's going to be close to 25 for the start of the season. So, not that that's the end of the world. Centers can play forever, as we've seen proven a couple times now.
Oh
But
yeah.
okay. Next guy is a guy who at first I thought I wasn't going to like that much. And the more I looked at him, he grew on me like crazy. It's Luke Whippler of the Ohio State Buckeyes. If there's another guy who might be the number one center in this class, it's probably Whippler.
Mhm.
22 years old, 6'3", 303 pounds, 31 and 5/8 inch arms. Ran a 5.14 40, 1.83 10-yard split, 30 and a half inch vert, 8 foot 10 inch broad. Testing was a little bit better than Schmitz, basically. He tested a little bit better, a little bit quicker, a little more explosive, but nothing over the top crazy. He's in the third or second round of every big board. The aggregate currently has him in the mid third. Graded out well in all areas except for gap blocking in 2022. Allowed 1 sack, 0 hits, and 7 hurries. So pretty clean. Kept CJ Stroud nice and clean. And yeah, he's probably center number 2 right now. So how do you feel about him?
I think he's pretty safe as being a okay. Should be a solid center in the league. Probably should end up being a top 15, top 16 type of guy in this league minimum. And I think that he does have a little bit of like Schmitz, where there's some safety in the floor of him as a player. I think he's at his best in the double team element of the center position. There was times I watched, for instance, on the tape with him and Keanu Benton, and Benton definitely he did pretty good against him overall. So there were some encouraging signs with him one-on-one in that respect. I really like him as pass protection, especially picking up blitzers and stunters and being able to just keep his feet moving laterally from the center position. I thought was pretty impressive from that standpoint. He's not, I think, quite what you have in Schmitz as far as the mover in space to me. I don't think that he moves as comfortably or does it as executes the blocks as well when he's
Mhm.
got to start getting away from the line of scrimmage. My notes on him are he seems like a phone booth center to me, where I have
Mhm.
to keep him within that basically 2 yard range around him at all times to keep him at his most comfortable.
Yeah, I felt like I saw him working in space fairly well. I actually thought that was actually one of the things that stood out to me about him. One thing about Whippler that's worth noting is that he was only like a 2-year starter at Ohio State compared to a lot of these guys are like 4-year starters. So
Mhm.
his technique will probably improve. But I thought he did a good job keeping his balance in space. I thought he was high IQ in the way he approached the position. I thought he was great working in space and finding defenders at the second level. I don't know. I didn't
I
find that to
didn't,
be I
yeah.
didn't that was
I
not my
didn't
experience.
I definitely saw him get there, but never under control, never there to lay the block, always seemingly hitting a half a shoulder of the man or arriving and whiffing at times. So tape by watch just was nowhere near on that. And I was watching really closely for that with him specifically. But what I took away from the good tape I saw of him was just him being at the line of scrimmage. The further away he gets from it, in my opinion of it, he just didn't seem like he was, to me, comfortable with it. It just not in the same way.
All right, we watched different games, I guess, or something.
Yes, I suppose so.
Yeah. I put a third round grade on him, and I would be pretty excited about getting him in the third.
Yeah, I think late second, third round would be fine there with it. I think he's a pretty safe pick and what he gives you.
Yeah. Mhm. All right. We got another. This is, I think, the third and final of the day 2 centers. I think there are going to be 3 day 2 centers. This is the final one. And I kind of developed a man crush on this one. I got
Oh,
to be honest. I really. really like the idea of drafting Joe Tippmann of the Wisconsin Badgers. This guy's 22 years old, 6'6", 313 pounds, 32 and 3/4 inch arms, 10 and 3/4 inch hands. Every big board has him in like the second or third, except for ESPN. They have him barely getting drafted for some reason. I think they don't know who he is or something.
They just don't update their boards. They put the board up and they just leave it.
Yeah. He's around 80 on the aggregate, so third round, right around the third round, right around Tippmann. Graded out well in every category from PFF last year. Allowed 1 sack, 2 hits, and 2 hurries. Probably the best center metrics I've seen so far from PFF. How'd you feel about Joe Tippmann?
I liked Tippmann a lot as well. I think that there's a little bit of a fluctuation between like Wilper and him, for instance, where I think he'd be a better scheme fit for us in the movement game stuff, but he doesn't have necessarily the high floor. Loved his reactions. So much about doing center is that you're not really with always a presupposed job, where I got to block this guy here, I block this guy there. It's being aware in space of what's going on. Your partner's struggling here and needs some help. Give him that block and pass protection as you're free. And he always made the right choice and felt the right problem that was maybe going on that he needed to help, as when he had those moments of creativity as a center to kind of decide what he wanted to do with it. But I thought he moved really well in space. I thought he reacted to like slanting blitzers and gaps, the guys shooting gaps. I thought he did a great job with that, where he could always catch those guys. And even if they got through with penetration, he was going to ride them out through the back of the play. You're never going to just get a clean break getting through there on him. And that stood out, I thought, over and over on the tape. His feet stay really active in pass pro. Like, for instance, with Wilper, sometimes he does good with it, but just kind of just gets rooted down in sets. He's kind of, I'm here's where I am. That's why I call him kind of the phone booth thing. I think after he does initially lay his first block, sometimes he doesn't always have an ability to sustain on it as much, where guys can kind of, just bleed off of him a little bit one way or another. But he does all the things you want to do from the center position. I think he would bring the movement stuff we'd like. He's big, so you like that too. No undersized stuff there with him. But I liked his tape too, man. He jumped out to me.
Yeah, I actually had more pros in the pro list for him than any other player I've looked at in the whole draft.
Ooh.
He's like, I think he's got the upside to be the perfect blend of strength and athleticism that you want in a center. He's got the strength of a phone booth center and the athleticism of a not Jason Kelsey. Jason Kelsey's a unicorn, but he has tremendous mobility. He's really sticky and strong against pass rushers, good lateral movement. He's great to go after linebackers, even defensive backs. He can go block at the second and third level. He's got high awareness, great hands. He handles line calls, no problem. The only real issue I see with Joe Tippmann is he's too tall, and he's going to lose leverage battle a lot because he's not the low man. You want to be the low man, and he's not great at that.
And then he ends up, when in the battle ensues, off of your point with that battle ensues, and then he ends up that battle at times off of his feet too often. Because he'll lose the leverage, and then he's off on one foot, and then the guy kind of disengages him, and then he's suddenly now on the ground. That was the one thing that stood out with me too on that. I don't know if you were going to complete that process, but I'm piggybacking on that one, because that's what I saw where a lot of that was coming from, where just he can't get on leverage, can't get low enough, gets high, gets off balance with it, and then he can't keep his feet.
Yeah. So the other thing is, this is not, and here's the thing, this is not something I'm concerned about. I think his technique needs work. His punch can be a little bit inconsistent. Sometimes he loses balance. He can lunge a little bit. Like he won't maintain balance when he's going in for the block, but that's okay. He's going to he could sit on the bench for a year and work on those issues. And then by 2024, he's ready to go. This is a guy who probably needs a little bit of time to develop, and fine by me. We're in a situation where we can afford that. So to me, the ideal situation would be the Seahawks to come away from this draft with Tippmann, hopefully in the third. Some people are talking like he's boosted his stock up to the second round. I don't know if he's gotten there yet, but I wouldn't mind taking him in the second round, honestly. And then he sits for a year behind Evan Brown, learns to iron out the little kinks in his game. And then by year 2, I think you're going to have an excellent starting center.
Yeah, I'd be pretty hard line on third round for me, but I would definitely jump on him in third round, and I'd take that pathway with him. I think like you said, too, his issues are correctable. They're not fatal flaws in his game, but things that should come with time and teaching and all that other stuff.
Yeah. I mean, there's been some talk lately that he's going to be a first round pick, but there's a lot of misinformation going on right now. Are you feeling that too? Like, I think we've gotten to that
Oh,
point.
definitely. Well, you'll hear a variance of things. You'll be in one day and you'll hear this thing of like, there's a certainty this guy is going to fall. Then the next day you're like, yeah, he ain't leaving the top 5 or something like that. You go, wait, what? Huh? What's going on here? It's getting that. It's getting to the dirty pool stage now where it's the teams are really trying to sell what they're doing and the way they're doing to set the cards right. I guess set the table
Yeah,
right.
like I'm sure you're familiar with all the Will Anderson kerfluffle the last few
Yeah, Texans are going
days.
to take Tyree Wilson number 2, I guess, huh?
Yeah. And I saw a tweet yesterday that was like, there's a theory around the league that the Texans are saying they're going to take Will Anderson so the Colts don't trade up and feel really good about them getting a quarterback at 4. And then Houston's going to take a quarterback and leave Indy out in the cold on their quarterback. It's like this endless, like, leveling war of like, you know, that I know, that I know, that you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, you can to me you spin yourself in circles. And the whole Colts Texans thing to me on this is sort of like the irrelevant to whatever they're doing to me. What I think they're going to do, Brendan, is they're going to take a quarterback. They're trying to see if they can get the haul that the Bears got for some kind of trade up. And if they can, I think that's going to be enough for them to override that. But I don't buy that they're going to take Tyree Wilson at number 2. I mean, people are really falling in love with Tyrell. That's the other thing is he's getting so much late love in this process for a guy that didn't test. Didn't
Yeah.
test.
Yeah, that's where I'm trying to figure out where this came from. Like, Trevon Walker did the thing because he tested and he blew up, right?
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
because he tested so brilliantly. But what are you basing it on with Tyree Wilson? He didn't even play at the end of the year because he got hurt, right?
That's right. And you got a Texas Tech defense here, which isn't the SEC. I mean, like you can't necessarily just trust the level of competition he went up against. Oh yeah, he definitely got challenged in a way that's at an equivalent level to where we know it as a pro that he'll have dominant traits to his game. People are doing some of that math with him on this, and I don't. To me, you're doing a little bit more advanced to the calculus on that with him, more than to me the risk that's at play with him there. Part of why I don't like taking him in at 5. I don't like taking that risk at 5. I would like much more certainty what I'm doing. But yeah, the Will Anderson stuff to me is, I don't know where your stance is on it. I don't care what Chris Sims says about this. Some of his opinions are fine. This one is silly.
Yeah.
Absolutely silly. And the picking apart of Anderson here and the way it's been done with it, just I don't get the tape people are watching, Brennan. What are you watching tape wise? Like I don't, well, it's, like Sim said, well, sometimes he's just in a block and then he just, the quarterback just holds the ball and then he rolls out and he just gets off his block and makes it. Like, what are
Mhm.
you watching? 33 sacks over. That's how he's getting his sacks, or his coverage sacks every time. No, he's in the SEC doing this 3 years of production and not just sacks. I got a debate about him as a run defender, Brendan. One of my comments, like he can't play the run. 60 odd tackle for losses in his career. And
Yeah, that's a weird that one. That's just like you don't watch him play at all, or you don't look at like that sounds like something that people just like make up. You just say stuff to say stuff. Like, it's I can understand saying like, okay, he doesn't have great speed or bend around the edge. Like, that stuff is true. That makes sense. He's not
yeah.
Von Miller or the Brown Miles Garrett, but to say he can't play the run is bizarre.
Oh, what people said was in my mock, I was moving Daryl Taylor, and I said in Daryl Taylor, well, he can't play the run. They're like, well, you're kind of being hypocritical because Anderson can't play the run. So you're moving out one guy can't play. I'm like, wait, what? Taylor's like one of the worst run defending edges in the entire sport right now. Like it's him and who, like who's worse, and Anderson's not even in the same sport. So yeah, this is a weird point in the process. I'm not
Yeah.
really buying it at this point, Brendan. I'm kind of almost thinking
Yeah.
it's all a lie until
And the Panthers are really trying to sell that they're already married to Bryce Young, like the decision's over. And I don't know if I buy it either.
I agreed, especially with how in love they seem to be with Stroud.
Yeah.
I'm same way. I'm
Hmm.
kind of just like, you know what? I'm going to trust more of where the process was with those opinions 3 weeks ago and what we were kind of understanding it to be than I am right now.
Yeah. I mean, if you believe what is being said, it's like everybody's just falling all over themselves for Bryce Young right at the end here, because apparently Houston taking Will Anderson or Tyree Wilson is motivated because they don't like any quarterback except for Bryce Young. So it's like everyone just fell in love with Bryce Young, and Like, I mean, I don't think him chugging a bunch of water right before the combine would really change anyone's mind that much.
I wouldn't either. And again, it's like CJ Stroud's giving you 2 amazing years of production out of Ohio State. I know it's Ohio State and all, but like what he's not in that play right now. I guess I can get the Will Levis thing, but and maybe a little bit to a degree Anthony Richardson thing. But when it's all said and done, I still lean back. 3 quarterbacks are going to the top 4, and we might have 4 in the 4. I mean, when it really all just the talk, barrels down. That's the bottom line.
It wouldn't. The one thing I'll say about it is that D'Amico Ryans can kind of do whatever the hell he wants for a while because he has that 6-year contract, and Houston's already paying like 3 other coaches. They're not going to fire him. Like he can, like what would he have to do to get fired? He'd have to show up to a game with no pants on, basically.
Getting a massage.
Yeah, okay, that would do it too. But then Houston could get their money back. Probably there's probably like you're not getting paid. Like that's what it would take. He would have to do something so bad he wouldn't even get his money.
Yeah, they could just fire him for whatever that lawyer word is for it. Intent of something or whatever.
Cause.
Yeah, fired with cause. Yeah, I mean he could, and if he loves Tyree and he thinks people are like, well, he's going for his Bosa. If he really thinks Tyree's going to be David Bosa, I guess you could, do that. Bosa comes out of Ohio State. Bosa with his hand fighting and his advancement as a pass rusher with his technique so far beyond Tyree. Tyree's like a power guy. It's not really an apples for apples thing there.
Yeah, I'm not buying it. Upo, thank you for the $20 super chat. Appreciate it. You're both right on Schmitz. Tape looks good blocking the second level, but the combine numbers matter because he can be unathletic and get away with it in college, but in the pros, NFL linebackers will expose his athletic weakness. Yeah. Some people try to say the combine doesn't matter at all because, they're wearing underwear, they're doing drills, it's not a real game. But this is a circumstance where I think you can learn a lot from the combine.
I'm definitely in favor of the combine. I'm a big backer of the combine and testing numbers, so I don't want to devalue numbers in any way. I will say, as we kind of said at the top of this with John Michael Schmitz, and this is just my kind of outlook on Dupo, is that there are people in the draft, and it's not that there's 50 of them. It's not that there's probably 25 of them. There's probably maybe 10 guys where I can turn on the tape and see what they're doing on the tape, and I feel good enough in my evaluation point from that to go and say that guy's going to be a good pro, and I don't need his testing numbers. I can go look at Jalen Carter and say I don't need that guy's testing numbers to know that he's going to be a really good pro. I personally, this is just my standpoint, feel the same way about John Michael Schmitz. I watch his technique and his ability, how quick he is out of his stance. So they said, again, this is a little bit of like the thing with Lucas last year. One of the reasons I really got hot to trot on Lucas initially, if you go back and watch my scouting thing on him 6 months prior to us drafting him, is that, okay, he's 6'6", and he tested okay, but he's so quick out of his stance. He's a rubber band out of his stance that it gives him an extra head start on everybody. And it suddenly almost makes a guy quasi quick that might be a little bit slow because they have that beat. It's like little just things like that he does from within the position that get him edges that I'm going to trust on him with the next level. But I do get, for some, the testing numbers are going to weigh a little more heavily on it. I have certain guys that I'm not going to, and again, it's a small list for me in a draft. We're talking about a draft of 300, 400, 500 guys. And then we're talking about maybe for me, 10 guys that I don't need that with. I don't need their testing numbers to know this guy can play, he can ball. And I feel that way about Schmitz.
Yeah. It's a balancing act. It's a balancing act. And the thing about this statement that I really want to stress is just because it worked in college doesn't mean it's going to work in the pros. Like there are plenty of, in a few days, we're going to do safeties. And there were a lot of safeties in college who played free safety, strong safety, slot corner, and linebacker, who we're going to look at and probably go, yeah, that's not going to fly in the NFL. He's not going to be good enough in all those areas. He's going to be good in a couple, but there are a couple areas where you get to the NFL and you're not big enough to be a strong safety. You're not good enough in man coverage to play slot corner. You're not, stuff like that.
I do, but I think that's also a net that can cut both ways because this is how we led it out of the place of not going for Creed Humphrey. Well, he doesn't have the athletic markers here. He got away with it in college, but he's not going to be able to get it done the next level because look at his athletic numbers here. See the athletic numbers. Well, this is where it can send you and lead you astray into the wrong direction, because
Mm-hmm.
you're getting away from the tape at that point, and you're putting more of the weight behind these testing numbers and them as a metric that have nothing to do with how the game's played when guys are putting their hands on each other. And that's my only issue with leaning into it that hard in this kind of scenario. When the tape's so overwhelming of what he's showing you, it's not a once every couple plays, it's not a flash thing, it's not a, well, when you see it going right for him, it looks this way thing. It's that snap in and snap out. The guy is like you said with the Jared Stanger thing you mentioned, he's doing his job and doing it tremendously well every snap. That's
Mm-hmm.
not going to like a drop, like a trap door suddenly drop out from under him the second that he reaches the pro level, any more than it didn't for Creed Humphrey, who didn't test well.
Mm-hmm.
It's to me very much, that's why I made that inverse thing between him and the other guy, because it's that way. There's tape that you can watch on college that can show you a guy that is going to be able to go out there and do it in a way. And I know this would be a disagreement between probably me and me and Upo on this one, but I do feel this way pretty strongly, that there are select guys that we should be able to look at and not have to rely back on those testing numbers and go, okay, well, the testing number says this, so I got to throw out this tape now, because once he gets to the pros, that's just not going to be able to do that anymore because the testing numbers.
Mm-hmm.
I can't go there on that one. That gets a little too simplistic on it for me. When again, turn the tape on Schmitz
Mm-hmm.
and tell me that's not a guy that's going to be a top 10 center in this league. I just don't see how you can't. I don't see how we can't see it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All right. Okay, now we're on to centers who are probably going to go about day 3, probably going to go past the top 100. Some of them still pretty interesting, though. We actually had at least one of them in for a top 100 visit already. But this first one, to my knowledge, not yet. It's Oluwatimi, formerly of, I believe, the Virginia Cavaliers, but the last years he's been for the Michigan Wolverines. 24 years old, 6'2.5", 309 pounds, 32 3/4 inch arms. Ran a 5.3, 840, 1.86 10-yard split, 29-inch vert, 9'2" broad, 23 BP reps. ESPN really likes him. They have him in the 3rd, but the other ones all kind of have him in the 4th. The aggregate has him in the 4th. Graded out well in all categories last year. Didn't allow any sacks, 5 QB hits, 4 hurries. So graded out well from PFF. But what do you think of Oluwatimi?
I think he's one of my favorite pure fits for the center position. Another guy I know that didn't necessarily test amazingly. He tested okay. But a guy that on tape is asked to do nearly play in and play out everything off of mobility. That's what I saw. Everything was a reach block. Everything was getting to the second level. It was not just merely like the double teams that Wilper pulls. For instance, really a lot of the time he's just doubling. With Olatami, they're having him get to that spot and get that shield block put in and get it, get to the spot we need to get. Don't make sure you hit there. And he got there time and time again. And he's very comfortable moving in space and blocking in space. And he's gonna do the job right. That's reflected by the PFF score, is that you're kind of asking him to do a kind of tall order sometimes, because it is snap and snap out that he's got to get to space on his block, but he's accomplishing it and getting it done. He can get a little bit forklifted as far as in pass protection and from a strength standpoint. He got 29 reps on the 225, but he could get a little bit, especially one-on-one. He can get pushed back just a little bit. But I just loved the movement stuff. I loved how we got to those blocks in that way. And it stood out from a lot of the other centers in this draft and feeling a little more pure to me, Brendan, than it did with some of the other centers in this draft, where like there's guys that can do it, but this feels sort of pure with me in him doing it. He occasionally can also do the old pull the chair out from under the zero tech thing, where he gets guys thinking and he'll just kind of pull out and get them to flop down onto their face. It's a weird kind of move he's got. He can pull out. Heady player there, smart guy. He's kind of that cliche of what you look for in the position, with this sort of cerebral mindset and that type of thing.
Yeah, that's the main thing I noted about him. I thought he was very smart in how he plays the position. He's really good pre-snap. He's got good technique, a strong latch. He grabs you. He's not letting you go. And I don't mean in the way of drawing a penalty flag, by the way.
No.
I mean the good way. Good double teaming. He's capable blocking at the second level and on the move. The issues with him that I found were, even though he's only 6'2.5", it felt like he played standing straight up, so he would lose leverage. Needs to learn how to sink the hips a little bit better. Definitely going to be a little physically weak. Feels like he moves a little stiffly, even though he gets the job done. So I think he's got a little bit of a lower ceiling, but I think he's potentially a pretty good fit. And if we get to the 4th round and we haven't addressed center yet, Oluwatimi makes a good deal of sense to develop for a year and then maybe start in 2024.
You could be picking up a guy that you get that past that third round range that it gives you the cheap starter going into the future. Because I think he's going to be pretty pro ready. I feel like even if you do take him in this draft, there's at some point next year he'll probably be getting some starter reps in there at center. He'll probably get a couple games. He'll be out there rolling, and I think he'll do pretty well at it. I really like this guy in a class of centers, even though he's not a highly rated. I really, really like this guy. If the Hawks picked him for his fit to our scheme and by what he was asked to do in that Michigan scheme. Not all these centers are being asked to kind of hit these things to the level of he was being asked to do, and he's so comfortable with it. And it's got to be such a necessity for us going forward with these guys and looking for that kind of that pure fit with that.
Did you have third round or fourth round on him?
I elevated him up, I think, to the third round because I felt like he was such a scheme fit that he was a pure fit that I couldn't deny it.
Yeah, I just can't put him on the same level as Tippmann. I like Tippmann a good deal better, and if Tippmann's third, then I think Oluwatimi needs to be fourth. But I did like him, pretty nice.
I have Tippmann in the third too. So both those two guys for me and Tippmann's ahead of him on my board, my horizontal board. So it's literally Tippmann, Oluwatimi, 1-2 right there. So I've got them very close to each other. I do like Tippmann more though.
Yeah, just more upside, I think. Oluwatimi doesn't have a super high upside, I think, but I think he'll be good.
Higher floor on him, maybe.
Yeah. Okay, this next guy's kind of weird because he may not end up playing center in the NFL. I kind of put him here because that's where I had him before the season started, and then he spent the whole year at left guard. But I think he played better at center. So I'm going to go ahead and talk about him in this context. It's Jarrett Patterson of the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, who was, in my opinion, the number one center before the season started, and then things changed. 6'5", 306 pounds, 31 3/4 inch arms, 10-inch hands, tested relatively poorly, not much explosion or speed. ESPN is the one big board that still has him in round 3. The others all kind of have him in the round 5 or 6. The aggregate has him in the 4th. Last year he played center for Notre Dame, was 2021. He graded out at about an 80 overall, nice and solid. No sacks allowed. 11 hurries, though, which is a little more than you would prefer. But he was a good player for them. What do you think Jarrett Patterson's profile fits in as?
I do like him better center than I liked him at guard. Strong hands, good punch, tax double teams, great. At his best as a pass protector, as a center, I felt like. What stood out to me was Notre Dame had him do a lot of manning up mano-a-mano on 0 and 1 techs in pass protection when he was a center. And that may be why you saw a little bit more of the pressures from him, because he was being asked more than centers would normally be asked to go kind of one-on-one in pass protection against, kind of a tall order for him. He's got long arms, but he doesn't use them well enough. He lets guys get just too into him too often. I like his awareness, his timing, how he handles blitzes. Great. He is a bit of a reacher. And so I didn't like that. Just kind of sometimes a little out of control, but a very strong guy, a guy with pro strength. A guy with gets his hands on you and he's going to be able to hang in there with those interior guys at the next level. But I think the nice part about him here is that if he does wash out as a center and that doesn't work, I think he can slide into being a decent right guard in this league. So he's a solid all-around prospect for me, Brendan, but there's not a lot of sizzle here necessarily. Like the strength, like some of the attributes.
Yeah.
But nothing next level to him either.
Yeah, one thing I can say about him is that even though he's 6'5", he knows how to sink his hips and get low. He uses leverage really well when run blocking, great at double teams, got a good awareness of technique and pass protection, strong pre-snap understanding. He seems good pre-snap. Just not going to be good in space, not a good athlete. He actually did not come away with very good length from the combine. They gave him 31 3/8.
Okay.
So
well, that explains why he's not using his length then. That's why he's getting to that. He doesn't have the length to use.
He was using those mannequin arms under his jersey, I guess.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I suppose so.
Yeah. He's just not very good in space in general. So I don't think he's a good fit. No. And I feel like there's a low ceiling on this guy. I don't see him ever becoming like a great center in this league, even if he does end up working out decently. I put like a 5th round grade on him.
Yeah, I got probably late fourth, early fifth is where I
Yeah.
am with him, right in that area.
Mhm. All right. How the mighty have fallen with Jared
Yeah, I
Patterson.
know, man.
Yeah.
He needed to be at center this year so he could advance his traits. Notre Dame did
Yeah.
no favors with that one.
Ricky Stromberg is next up here, Arkansas, playing with KJ Jefferson. So he knows how to run block because they run the ball a lot down there. So that's cool. 22
Mhm.
years old, 6'3", 306 pounds, 33 and a quarter inch arms, nice and long, 9 and 3/4 inch hands, tested okay, 5'2", 640, 1'8", 110 yard split. Most of the big boards have him around like the 4th, 5th, 6th. The aggregate has him late 5th right now. Graded out well in zone last year against the run in the pass, not so good in gap. No sacks, no hits allowed on KJ Jefferson last year, only 11 hurries. So what do you think of Ricky Stromberg?
He's not going to make it pretty. He's not going to be overpowering. Good active feet, but he's going to be more of that shield blocker type out there. He's going to do it with just pesky high effort a lot of the times where, you get him off. It's one of those centers where as a defensive tackle, you get him on one leg, you got him up, you figure you got him beat. Now you just got to slide past him and you just can't get back. You just can't get that final step past him to get to the quarterback or get to the ball carrier. He's the epitome of a guy that just will get the job done sometimes in the most dirtiest of fashion. Not dirty like he plays below the belt, but just it isn't going to look super clean in the way that he's getting it done. But on tape over and over again, part of why he's probably graded as well as he is, he does handle his guy. He does take care of business out there.
Mhm.
Nothing exceptional about him. Slides well, pretty good feet. I think are probably the best thing that I liked about him. Absorbs power really well from within the center position. But nothing was exceptional. Just all those things were kind of solid that they would show up for the most part throughout the film. So it wasn't anything that snap after snap. His feet looks great and light. He's fairly comfortable moving, but he's not he's not Tipman or Oluwatimi moving out in space.
Yeah.
He's definitely that. But loved his effort. Love it
Mhm.
with the old centers that just get in there and they like a dog just get this done. They're going to hold on to the bone even if you got them lifted off the ground and they're holding on to it.
Yeah, it just felt like he got pushed around a little too much.
Mm.
And unfortunately, when you play for Arkansas, you don't build that many reps in pass protection because of the nature of their offense. So I feel like I have some general questions about that. Just overall, like how good is he at these things? But ton of starter experience, and he's blocked for every rushing play under the sun down in Arkansas. He knows how to use his hands well. He's got a big frame. He's decently strong, I think, for some stuff at least. I think he's really smart pre-snap, and he has high awareness. He does the head on a swivel thing where he's going to pick up blitzers well. But ultimately, I think there's just a little bit of a low ceiling here. There's some questions. Maybe he would be better in a different kind of offense that he's more familiar with. I don't know if he'd be a great fit in this offense. I said 5th round on him. I would take him in the 5th round.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if you find someplace, and that's where I've got him as well in my grade. You could find this guy in the 5th round, and he becomes like a Corey Linsley type the Packers found in the 5th round, where it just guy ends up starting in the league, and
Yeah.
it's where sometimes that's how these centers go, where it's like the tape isn't always beautiful, but you're like, he just gets the job done. Then he gets the pros and he keeps getting the job done by hook or crook. But I could see it with him, but I got to put him in 5th round for the flaws that are there in the game because you can't deny him.
Real quick here, Big Patty Daddy, thank you for the $2. What's
What's up,
up,
Big
boys?
Patty?
Go Hawks. Gonna start streaming. All right, Big Patty.
What's up? Go Hawks, man.
Yep. All right, we're getting
Good
close,
luck,
man.
man.
Mhm. All right. Just a couple more centers we're going to look at here. Again, not a position that runs super deep. I think in most drafts it doesn't. But yeah, interior offensive line kind of becoming a little bit of a lost art these days, it feels like.
It is indeed, man. Less and less guys. Name wise, we got 3 times as many receivers as it feels like we got centers and whatnot.
All right. But this guy I actually liked a little more than I thought. It's Alex Forsyth of the Oregon Ducks, 24 years old, 6'4, 303 pounds, 32 and 3/4 inch arms. Um, get this 20 and a half inch vertical. 20, that is by far the lowest vertical I've ever seen. 7 foot 11 inch broad. That is probably the lowest broad. So You don't want him running an obstacle course. You don't want him doing the tire drill. You don't really want him doing anything that requires him to get up off the ground. 29 bench press reps, though, he can lift. So,
He better. He better with those testing numbers.
yeah. Big boards, a couple have him going undrafted. One has him going in like the 5th. One has him going in like the 7th. The aggregate has him in the 6th, I believe. Graded out pretty well last year overall, especially against the pass. 0 sacks, 0 QB hits, 0 hurries last year. Now he's playing at Oregon, and they're like, the greatest, their offensive system is really what makes it so that their quarterbacks never get harassed. I think we all understand that, but still, you can't do any better. You can't do any better than 0-0-0.
It's true.
Yeah.
It's not. I mean, all you do is job. All you do is execute your job. So
Yeah.
it is a fine point that you bring up about that, because when you do look at, some of these other offenses with it too, like UCLA does that with their high volume attack. So like both their guards are rated like super high in the league, in the country, because they've got so many extra snaps in there. And they're getting linemen gassed at times.
Right, but what's your take on Alex Forsyth?
He's a technique guy. He's got some good power. The bench press matches up to the tape, where he definitely is a guy that can get up on guys, especially hold it down against one techs, one-on-one. A lot on the tape I saw with him, you could see the ability in there with doing that. He doesn't test well. He does have an efficiency of movement, and Oregon did ask him to get to blocks out in space at times. So he did get there eventually. He'll find his way. It'll take him a little bit of time, but he will get there. He's got a real that technique, natural feel for how to play the position. A guy that you're going to go get late. I do have a 6th round grade, because the testing numbers do match up to what you see on tape, where it's just, he's not an athlete, man. He knows what he's doing. He'll efficiently move there as quickly as he can. He won't waste any motion, but it's just going to take him some time. And I don't know if athletically he's got enough to hold up, at the next level when you ask him to do that. But he did at college. He did hold up pretty well there at college. And then he did, when he was moving in space, he was relatively okay at it for the most part. So, but twitchier guys will give him issues. Guys that would dip and bend, I think, will give him issues when he's really got to move his feet in space, especially laterally. But 6th round, I think, would be a good spot for him.
Yeah, he seems like a pretty smart player who makes the most of what he has. He's despite the testing results, I think he is a little bit capable in space, although I don't know how well it's going to translate. He hits his angles at the 2nd and 3rd level well. He understands leverage. He maintains his blocks really well. Like some of these guys, they block, and then they just immediately get shed. Like he's a guy who latches on pretty well. I suspect he'll be a flag magnet at the NFL level. I think he's going to attract a lot of flags. But I kind of like him. I put 5th or 6th, somewhere in there, 5th to 6th round. Probably a pure reserve, but not a bad reserve to have either, because he also played both guard spots, by the way. So a little bit of flexibility.
Yeah, he can play all over that offensive line, and truly, he looked comfortable doing it when he was asked to do it. So he's a smart player. He might be a guy that catches on the league because of how well he knows to play the game beyond the physical abilities and any of that.
Let's see here. Taker 610. Thank you for the $2. Will Cross be a $20 million per year type left tackle? By the time we get there, I think it'll be more than that, honestly. Like these left tackle salaries are moving quickly.
Yeah, I mean, by the time we get there, it's probably more like 25 when he arrives there, Taker. So, and yes, he's going to be. I don't think Cross is ever going to be a top 3 tackle and left tackle in the sport, but I think he'll be a top 5. And as a top 5 guy, Laramie Tunsil type, look at how many times Laramie Tunsil's gotten paid. So, you're the going rate is the going rate. And yeah.
I mean, Orlando Brown tried to get away with getting all that money despite not even being that good, and it didn't work out for him. But by the time we get to the Cross extension, it's probably going to be pretty biblical.
It will. And I think with Brown, he was being silly the whole time because he was trying to better Trent Williams' deal. And he was nowhere near the player that Trent Williams was. He was a right tackle playing out of position at left tackle, basically. And he's functional doing so. But a guy like Cross is a pure left tackle. He's a guy that is not playing out of positions in the right position. So I think the going rate's going to be, tremendously costly, but all the more reason, Brendan, why we've got to take advantage of this time now while you have these cheap tackles running on the books in these next couple of years.
We also got a double 9.99 super chat with no message from Brian Myers. So Brian Myers, thank you very much for your
Appreciate you,
dual
Brian.
donos. I don't know if he was trying to send a message and maybe it didn't come through, but if you were, just leave it in the chat and I will address it. But
You're awesome,
thank you, Brian
Brian.
Myers. Appreciate it. Okay, last pure center in this draft, in my estimation, and this is a guy we had in for a visit. So, yeah. Do you think it's fair to say that if you're using a top 30 visit on a guy, it's a guy that you're interested in, but also a guy you're not, you have questions about? Like you're not in love with him, you don't hate him, you're bringing him in because you're trying to figure out which way to go.
Yeah, I think absolutely. It's not just, I think it's the whole spectrum of what you could be going through in your evaluation process for it. But it wouldn't be just simply, I mean, Carter, of course, gives us one perspective. Like you're bringing him in here to ask him certain questions and test his mind. Some guys I think you could bring in to see how they interact in the culture. Schneider's talked about that. We want to just sometimes bring him in and bring him around our guys and get a feel for how they interact with them. So I think there's just a wide thing, reasons that you bring him in. It certainly indicates interest, but it also could be something of just like you said, there's also something you're sniper like trying to, get in on there to tap into.
Yeah, because obviously we've had Jalen Carter in for a visit and not Will Anderson. And people are saying, like, oh, people are wondering, oh, that must mean we really like Carter and we don't like Will Anderson.
Yeah. See,
And
and
it's like,
yeah.
no, I think it's more because we know what's up with Will Anderson. There's nothing to talk about there. Like he's
Right.
we know exactly what he is. There's nothing to talk about. But with Carter, there are real questions.
Right. Exactly. I think there's different stuff for different guys for why you'd bring him in. I don't think there's just one tried and true reason. I mean, this kid, what he said, the kid we're going to be talking about in a second, is out of Troy, right? So small scout, small school guy. I mean, you're just, you want to, let's get him in a pro environment, see if he gets to, the eyes get big, if he suddenly, give out all these little reasons they could be looking for, all these way these organizations run. So it's kind of hard to predict what the reason is, but I think there's a lot of different stuff that makes you bring him in.
And like on a similar topic, we had Devon Witherspoon in for a visit now, but not Christian Gonzalez. And I think the reason why is because there's nothing to wonder with Christian Gonzalez. He's basically a perfect cornerback prospect.
Yeah.
And Witherspoon, like, is he going to be good in zone? Is he big enough? Like, there are questions there, regardless of who you think is the better prospect.
Yeah. I mean, and then especially if they're worried about like, hey, let me give you this one, you played a lot of man in Illinois, I mean, we're going to run you and have you play zone here all the time. You can be happy with that. You can be comfortable with that. Yeah, agreed.
Mm-hmm. All right. So anyway, Jake Andrews of Troy, 6'3", 305 pounds, 31 and 7/8 inch arms, 5'1", 540, pretty good for a center, 1.8, 10-yard split, 26-inch vert, 8 foot 6 inch broad. A couple big boards have him going undrafted. Some have him in the 5th. The aggregate has him in the 7th. I guess you could say they take the average. Graded out well in run blocking last year, and not so much in pass blocking though.
No.
Pretty good in zone and gap though. A little bit of flexibility there. Allowed 4 sacks, which is by far the most we've seen of any center. 4 hits and 11 hurries. So, what do you make of Jake Andrews of Troy?
He employs the casual approach to pass protection. Just doesn't move his feet, doesn't linger on the block. It's like he's going to lay the pass protection block for as long as he thinks he absolutely has to at a bare minimum level. And then there's going to reach a point of the play where he's just going to kind of go, okay, I'm done. He's really good coming downhill. And when you get him coming downhill, helping in a combo block, getting to the second level on linebackers, he can be devastating in that respect, as reflected by his run blocking. I mean, he's really a guy, if you can put this in a certain way, Brennan, like he's a center best going downhill. Like just don't have him going backwards. Keep him keep him coming downhill at you, and you'll be fine with it. But I think he will have potentially a place in a run blocking, power based kind of scheme where he's not asked to pass protect very often. But he's got to go to the right situation, and you better be committed if you're going to start this guy to running balanced, if not a little bit more runs than passes, because those sacks aren't misnomers. He's going to be bad in pass protection at the next level as well. He just can't move his feet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what I can say for him is that if you can get him in the 7th round, he's got good size. Like I remember, might have been last year or 2 years ago, there was this one center from Illinois who was like a 7th round prospect. I looked at him. I think he weighed like 230 pounds. I was like, well, that's what happens when you get down to this part of the draft. You find centers who are 230 pounds. But no, this guy's actually got legit size. I respect it. Pretty good run blocker, good with his leverage. Works fairly well in space, tested better than I would have expected. But yeah, he'll lose against bigger nose tackles. Doesn't have great quickness, and like you said, not a lot of pass protection. Did play both guard spots at Troy as well, by the way, so there's a little bit of flexibility there. But I'm not seeing any reason to believe he's ever going to be like a starter in this league that you're happy about. So 7th rounder, UDFA, sure.
Yeah, that's where I'm at with it too. I mean, fine. I don't think he's going to start in this league though.
Yeah, like the Seahawks are actually visiting, doing a lot of top 30 visits with guys who are like you can't even find them. Like Robert Cooper, I could barely find any trace of his existence. Jarek Reed III, he's not on any big board. I think it's just they're trying to figure out, okay, who do we want to use our 7th round pick on to
What
make
about
sure
this?
we get them?
What about this though too? You're using it as a recruitment tool for UDFAs.
That's possible as well, yeah. Yeah, I could see that. But I think that's part of it, and I think the other part of it is okay, you kind of use your 7th round pick on a guy who's like, okay, we want to get him in UDFA, but we like him so much we want to make sure he has no choice but to come here.
Definitely.
And who's that going to be? So
Definitely.
we're trying to figure out who that guy is.
Yeah, and whoever you miss out on, you then try to get that out of the UDFA. But yeah, it's probably trying to who's the one we prioritize, who's the one we know we're not going to be able to get. You know, if we don't draft him, you know.
Henry Mars, thank you for the $2. Take Nolan Smith, convert him to strong safety or middle linebacker. Haven't heard that one yet. That's a new one to me.
I've had a few people present to me, can Nolan Smith move to middle linebacker? And certainly he can move well, and he's a run defending edge. So theoretically, yes. But my only counter on that one, Henry, has been I can't think of any time in the modern era where a guy played edge in college and then transitioned to middle linebacker in the pros. And if I don't have a baseline to go off of, I'm hesitant to say that it could be done.
All right. I agree with that. I mean, Nolan Smith is such an appealing prospect, I think, as an edge, as a speed rusher. I wouldn't really want to move him. I don't look at him like Tyree Wilson and I go, oh, that guy's not going to work on the outside in the NFL. Like that's a guy I want to move. This Nolan Smith, I think, is good enough where he is to where I'm not feeling the need to move him.
Agreed. I think, I mean, yeah, he does what he does really well. So,
all right. So we got one more positional group to look at here, and this is an interesting one, right? And I think discussions about this position have been very interesting this offseason. Because some people really value it, and then there are people like me who don't. Like the way I put it is, you wouldn't spend a 1st round pick on a kicker or a punter or a long snapper. So why would I spend one on a right guard? Honestly, why would I even spend a 2nd round pick on a right guard? I don't think you need to, but there are a couple guys that people really like, and we got to talk about them for a few minutes.
Indeed.
Okay. And we're going to start with pretty much the consensus number 1 right guard in this draft. It is O'Cyrus Torrence of the Florida Gators, 23 years old. He's massive. He's big. 6'5", 330 pounds, 34-inch arms, 11.25-inch hands. But he moves like a guy who's 330 pounds. 5'3", 140, 1.84 10-yard split. Can't jump over a phone book. 23 bench press reps, 4.81 10 yards, 20-yard shuttle. Most big boards have him in the 1st. A couple have him in the 2nd. Aggregate has him at 29th overall. Graded out quite well last year, and he did grade out much better in zone than in gap for whatever that's worth. Didn't allow any sacks or hits, allowed 8 QB hurries. Significantly better run blocker than pass protector, but what do you got on Osiris?
I mean, 7-foot wingspan, bare mitts for hands, the nasty and finish that you want to have out of your guard position. He's going to play to the whistle. As you said, he's all of 350 pounds. You feel that on the football field. He's going to move men out of the spot. He's going to hold up against any power guy in the sport. He will hold up. The testing numbers are emblematic of what he is on the football field as far as an athletic mover and shaker, which is to say that he is not. He is not moving in space. He's not getting to second level blocks. He is not a fit for our scheme in any way, shape, or form. He's the top rated PFF guard by their rating last year in all of college football. None of these things are undeniable, but he is not an athletic fit for what the Seahawks want, even from the old right guard position, which is less mattering. Part of the issue that we've had in recent years, Brendan, is bringing in guys or having guys here. I love how Lewis has excelled here, Brendan, but he's not a movement-based guy. And you haven't been there with the right guard position either, because Gabe Jackson was nowhere near what he was in his prime when you brought him here. And even Haynes, not really. This guy's way worse than any of those guys in that movement aspect of things. And even on top of that, I think he's got some struggles in pass protection with just not being able to move his feet. He's so big, he just can't sometimes move well enough. He gets the job done. His length is good enough, and he's wide as freaking 5 human beings shoulder to shoulder. So it's just to get around him is just an effort in itself. But I could walk away underwhelmed.
Yeah, I mean, for the right team, he's basically the perfect right guard.
Oh yeah,
but not this team.
No, Steelers.
Mm-hmm.
Goes to
Yeah.
that like that'd be their Steeler guard all day, but not for this team.
Yeah. But I mean, look, I got nothing bad to say about him as a traditional right guard. He's really good with leverage. He sinks his hips, great hands. His hands latch on, they don't let go. He's got an anchor that you're not going to bull rush. His footwork is good as long as he's not moving. Like his actual footwork is good. But he's in the phone booth, man. He's in the phone booth. He leaves the phone booth. He's a much worse player. So look, if he's there with our second round pick, okay, the value is starting to become okay, I can see it, but there's no way he's going to be there. He's going to be a late first, very early second round pick. And you can't tell me this guy is worth that. You just can't.
If you're going to do that, you honestly should be going to more next year power-based concepts up front rather than zone-based concepts, because in Damian Lewis, you already have a guy that's like a people mover type in there anyway. And if you're going to stack him with Torrance, then just slide into that stuff to adjust to the personnel you have rather than fitting the personnel to the scheme at that point.
Yeah, so I will pass. I'll let somebody else take the plunge on that one. I'm sure there's plenty of teams that are going to want him, and they're going to be very happy with him.
Like I said, he works fine in the old traditional. He would have worked great with us 2015. This would have been a perfectly viable option to add him.
All right, now we have the other right guard prospect who I believe is a lock to go day in the first 100 picks. Mm-hmm. This guy will probably go day 2, somewhere around the middle. It's Steve Avila, who we already briefly discussed. TCU, 6'3.5", 332 pounds, 33-inch arms. Tested a little bit better, 5'2", 140, 186, 10-yard split, but not much better. Still couldn't jump at all. 3-cone was okay, 28 bench press reps. Most of the big boards have him in the second. Some have him in the third. Aggregate says 53rd overall. Graded out really good in pass blocking last year from PFF and in zone. Not so much in run blocking or gap, which is kind of interesting, right?
Mm-hmm.
But allowed 9 hurries, 2 hits, 0 sacks on the season. But we've already discussed him, obviously. But let's spend a few more words on Steve Avila.
He's a bigger guy again, 330, got that extra size to him. But he does rely, I think, on initial quickness and leverage to usually try to win. That's the nature of his beast, so to speak. He is big enough to hold up at the point of attack and do a little bit of the movement stuff that we would ask for. So I like a little bit more from him than Torrance, but still coming back from a standpoint on this one, saying that he doesn't really move exceptionally well. He isn't a pure fit in what you'd want there at the guard position. From an athletic standpoint, like he moves well in space for his size, but not moves well in space for the scheme in what you would want from it. Pass protection does match up to me pretty well, other than blitzers can sometimes confuse him a little bit. So
Yeah.
as long as it's clean and he understands what he's seeing in pass protection at the snap, he's fine. He'll stand in front of everybody. You're not getting around him. He can mirror, he can do all that stuff. But if it's like a confusing stunt, or a twister, he gets a little bit like the head starts doing this on the field. You see a lot of this. Going, what are you looking at, Davila? Like stay on,
Yeah.
keep your head in front of you, and then the guy will slide by him a little bit.
Yeah, I feel like at the end of the day, he's a poor man's Torrance with
Yeah,
everything that comes with it. Like
yeah.
maybe there's one or like he has center flexibility, which Torrance doesn't have, right? Like he could play center.
Hmm?
Maybe he moves a little bit better than Torrance, but not by enough for me to care. I I I said, look, he's there in the middle third round, then the value is starting to get good, but there's no way he's going to be there in the middle third. So really the best way to say it is I'm not really interested. I don't see the value of an immobile right guard in the mid second where he's probably going to go.
Yeah, I agreed. I think that's where he goes. I think your comparison to Torrance is right. And he's Torrance, but he moves a little bit better, but he's missing some of Torrance's power.
Yeah. Okay. And I did have the thing about blitzers confusing him as well. I did notice that.
Yeah, he doesn't he gets really jumpy, man.
All right. So this next guy we're going to talk about is a great example of why I'm so anti guys like Torrance and Avila, because I can get this guy later. And I don't see any way in which it's not better to get this guy in even the late third or early fourth than Torrance in the first. It's Emil Ekiyor Jr. of the Alabama Crimson Tide, 23 years old, 6'2.5", 314 pounds, 34-inch arms, credible, 9.5-inch hands. Only did his bench presses at the combine, but 23 reps. Most of the big boards now have him in the third, but some actually have him really low. So the aggregate has him in the fourth because, you're taking the average. Graded out well in run blocking and pass blocking last year. Good in zone, mediocre in gap. Allowed 0 sacks, 0 hits, 0 hurries in 2022 for the Crimson Tide. How's it going to work in the NFL, Brandon?
I see a guy that I think I feel like very similarly to a little bit of what you got out of Damian Lewis when I watched the tape on him. I think for the most part, very traditional right guard, but has more movement and space than traditional right guards normally would. I think he's an efficient guy in his movement. He's more of the strong, powerful initial punch guy like Lewis was. So I like that. He's got guys always kind of off that strong initial punch. Always the defensive tackle felt like they were in recovery mode. They were reacting off what he was doing to them with that initial punch. I just like that about him. Definitely could root down really well with that power as well. You're not going to get him with a bull rush. He's going to be good with that. For whatever reason, I felt like he would be better going to more of like a timing based offense than like a mobile based offense. So like we would definitely fit that, but a guy that's going to have a quarterback who hits his back foot and the ball's out of his hand, less time that he's got to spend there really, maintaining there in pass protection. For me, just the longer the play went on, the less comfortable it felt in pass protection for me with him. But I did like him a lot in the run game and all the things that we would want our guys to do in the run game. And I'm actually very high on him. I like him in the late third round, actually. So I think he's going to start in this league somewhere, wherever he goes.
Yeah, I like this guy a lot. Like he's pretty good in space, I think. He's a skilled reach blocker. He's got a strong anchor as well. He's got power and a little bit of mobility. He plays with a physicality that you can't always teach. Most of his problems are things that I think can be coached up. Like I feel like sometimes he loses his balance when he's engaged with a lineman. Like he can lose his balance a little bit. He can get a little over eager and aggressive to go block somebody and just whiff.
Yeah.
These are
But it's
things that
coming
can be fixed.
from a good place because he's got that
Yeah,
nasty, right? He's trying to be
yeah,
nasty and mean with it. And that's so you're like, okay, at least he's doing,
yeah,
he's just missing for the hell of missing. He's missing because he's trying to be a bully about it.
yeah. So I wrote I would be happy to take him in the third, but he would be a dream day 3 selection. If you
Oh
could
yeah.
actually get him in the fourth, that's amazing.
That'd be tremendous value. 100%.
So yeah, big fan of Emil Ekiyor. I mean, honestly, I feel like he would be better with us than Torrance or Avila would be.
Agreed. Yes, I would feel better about it as far as I like him better. I do. I just would like that better than, especially we're talking about second round for those guys. They've gotten this like label to them as being the second round guys. As you said, I mean, why? Why? Because for what real true reason? They're big, they're strong, they look the part, but when we're talking about the modern NFL and all that you ask from linemen in the modern NFL, do they get all of that stuff done? And not really.
Yeah, I mean, for some teams
Yeah,
are
that's
going to
true.
be cool with
Yeah.
it.
For some, it did work.
All right. Next up, we have another guy that I kind of really ended up liking, really appreciating. Although this one, I'm not 100% sure about his position. There are definitely going to be some people who think he ends up playing left. But you know what? If he does that, that's more valuable. So I wouldn't be against that either. It's Andrew Voorhees of the USC Trojans. This was the guy who tore his ACL at the combine and then cranked out 38 bench press reps on a leg that didn't work. Pretty cool.
Oh yeah, that's a bad move, man.
Yeah.
You're
He's like, look, this is what's going to get me drafted. I got to crank out these reps. I don't care. I don't care what's going on with me. I got to crank this out. Let's see here. 6'6", 310 pounds, 32-inch arms, 10-inch hands, 29-inch vert, 8'9" broad. Most of the big boards have him in the fourth. A couple have him in the third. Aggregate has him in the fourth. Graded out really well in every area except for gap blocking. He was a 91 in zone last year. 2 sacks allowed, 1 hit, 12 hurries. So Andrew Voorhees, what's the skinny?
All power, all day, all long. Just and not a power from just being a big guy, a little bit like with Torrance, where he's just like 350. So he's just bringing that mass power. This guy's actually bringing some pure, just raw dog strong. A little bit like the bench press showed. He's got that just great functional power. He is an older prospect and he started a lot of games. So I think you're getting a bit of a wizened player coming in who's going to play. But at the same point in time, torn his ACL, older prospect. Are you not getting this guy going until he's 26? Is that like when you're really getting his first year of truly rolling? It may very well be with him. I think he's athletically limited. And that was before the torn ACL. And I can't think that it's going to get any better afterwards. So I indeed do believe that right guard is where he needs to settle in at the pro position. His hands hit the right space every time. His strike point is darn near perfect. The anchor's great. He understands how to root down, get that power going up through, and really creates a tremendous jolt to defensive linemen. But reach stuff, hitting those blocks, getting the second level. I know the zone stuff grades was great as far as the way that they go grade him out on that. I just felt like he was not comfortable as a mover in space. He just looked very out of sorts a little bit when they asked him to get to the second level.
I think he's pretty good with it compared to guys like Torrance and Avila. I think he's better at it than those guys, at least. Sure. Not like Emil Ekiyor. Ekiyor is different. Yeah. But I like this guy quite a bit. He's got a lot of plus traits, very powerful in opening up holes in the run game. He's got a mean streak, great latch with his hands, good footwork when mirroring, nice punch, strong anchor. But he's not a great athlete, like you said. I definitely don't think he's a great athlete, and the injury has me concerned. Like that injury may end up causing him to become an average athlete, and then you some of the luster's off the board a little bit.
And you might get him for a year. You might not get him for a year.
Yeah. I do wonder, does that injury give us an opportunity to get him that we otherwise would not have had? Like before, maybe this guy was a 3rd round pick, but now he got hurt. Now he's a 4th round pick. I wouldn't mind taking him in the 4th round. I would feel okay about that.
I would settle for 4th. I'd love to squeeze it into that 5th. We have two 5th round picks, and if I could grab him with that first early 5th round pick that we have, that would be the money one to me if we could pull that off. But I could understand 4th. The problem I have is just not as much the scheme fit to go early with them. That's my only issue with it going early.
Yeah, I would feel a lot better about it if he didn't. I feel like he would be a decent player in space, an okay player in space, if he didn't tear the ACL. But now we don't know how he's going to come back. Yeah. Although it seems like with modern medicine, they like put in a better ACL now. Like I remember, like they were talking about with Derrick Rose when he tore his ACL, and they said he came back, he can jump higher than he used to. I was like, "What? Did you put springs in there?"
See, I don't know about that though, because he wasn't the same player he was when he. I mean, when he walked in the ring, it was he did. Most of these guys to me are definitely they can say that it's better, but like, they can tell me it's like it's stronger, less likely to tear. But I don't know if don't know if you got that same springiness to it when you got to, put something else new or reclip it.
Okay, got a few more right guards to go through here. Half decent depth at the position in this draft, not great, but a little better than the other two. This next guy was a little bit of a combine warrior. This guy turned heads at the combine. John Gaines of the UCLA Bruins, 6'4", 303 pounds, 33 and 5/8 inch arms, 5-second 40 at 303 pounds. Pretty impressive. 1.73 10-yard split, 32.5-inch vert, 9'6" broad, 7.313 cone. All impressive numbers for a guy who's probably going to end up on the right side of the offense. Nevertheless, he was relatively unknown before the draft. Still has like a 5th round grade on the aggregate, and quite a few major big boards don't even have him. Like CBS doesn't have him in their top 400. Graded out really balanced and well last season from PFF. 78 overall, 76 again, 77 runs, 77 pass, 76 zone. Allowed a decent number of hurries, but pretty good season. What do you think about this guy in the pros?
I actually like this guy a lot. Did a lot of obviously the zone stuff being pure fit in college, and the tape that I watched, I was really, really impressed by. I think he is my favorite of the guys outside of Emil. He's my favorite of these guys. It's a little bit like the Oluwatimi. Then we were talking about that. Where here's a guy going later. He's not as highly talented as the other guys, but here's a guy that I would consider to be a pure scheme fit for what we want from the position. And what we're going to ask him to do, he's done so much of in college. The mobility requirements, I think that he would cross that to a T. I felt like once he got latched on, he stayed latched on. Light feet, long arms, definitely showed up. His base can definitely get wide in pass pro, and his hands are all over the place as far as that's, I think, where he went wrong with. But that to me is correctable. He is a little too finesse, but look, I mean, that's the scheme we run now. If you want to call it like you want to be derogatory about this scheme, and I'm not trying to be derogatory, but we kind of ask more now for finesse-based linemen than you would ask for more mauler-based offensive linemen. And this guy's not a mauler, but he can move and do all that other stuff you want to be done. And so I like this guy in the 4th round. I think that he's a guy that could come in and maybe start for you really right out the gate. But I was very, very impressed by John Gaines and what I saw him doing on tape.
Yeah, I said I'd be okay in the 4th, would love him in the 5th, which may very well still be possible. I don't know how teams are evaluating him because he was a guy that very few people knew about until the combine. So we'll have to see. But yeah, fantastic mobility, great athlete, really quick first step, understands leverage. He knows how to get low. Like you said, poor use of hands. But those are things that can be coached, You
Can you
can get better in
imagine?
those areas.
Can you imagine if we go 4th, 5th round Oluwatimi and then 5th round John Gaines, and maybe you walk away with this draft with 2 really good functional starters at center and right guard, super cheap on top of the tackles on the edges, and then you had the whole rest of the draft to then just completely invest in defensive line, linebacker, and whew, that'd be a nice draft, man.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say so. But yeah, I like John Gaines quite a bit too. Now, he'll never be strong. He'll never have a good anchor. He's going to get bull rushed like crazy. But that being said, that's something you're more willing to live with in the modern NFL.
Definitely. And he can grow. The strength is there for him to get stronger, I think. He's got the arm length at almost 34-inch long arms. So that's the part you can't teach. So I feel like you can get him a little bit stronger, but his tape wowed me with what I watched. I was very impressed.
All right. Now we have McClendon Curtis of Tennessee Chattanooga. They always send like 1 or 2 guys to the
Oh, they
draft every
always
year,
do.
it seems like. 23 years old, 6'6", 324 pounds, 35-inch arms. So right away, you're like, whoa, this guy's got pythons out there. So, I mean, hey, it's better than nothing. Tested not so great, admittedly, 5'2", 440, 185, 10-yard split, but not the worst. Big boards, ESPN and Sports Illustrated like him a lot. They have him in the 5th. The others kind of have him undrafted or in the 7th. Aggregate has him in like the 6th. Graded out really well overall last year, except in gap. 83 overall, 80 run, 91 pass, 0 sacks allowed, 5 hits allowed, 2 hurries allowed. Pretty good season for Tennessee Chattanooga. I don't know what they are. The Raging Cajuns. I'll just go with that.
Sounds good.
How'd you feel about McClendon Curtis?
I thought he's a fine guard prospect in this league. kind of like your average guard prospect, ideally sized all the way down the line, weight, length, size, good feet, capable of blocking in space, snappy out of his stance, quick to his spot, power, length, size. He gets guys rolling back, I thought, pretty on the often. He does have a tendency with his aggressiveness and the understanding he is so strong where he'll really try to fire out there and he overextends, and then he gets kind of drawn into the pull push game, where defensive linemen can sort of, they'll be pushing on you and you'll be pushing back, and then they just, as they're pushed, they'll push you first and then they pull you over using your leverage against you, and then this gets Curtis on the ground and they get around him at times, and the defenders went to that a lot with him. Like, that was a go-to move for them because he was so into that, just over, he goes too hard a little bit on really trying to get his punch out there. Correctable, though. I think that's fixable. Gets draws in pass protection where he loses little ground. He's not a menacing finisher, but he does the job and he gets it done. I think he could get a little bit more active with his feet, but and he's a little more of a masher than he is a puncher or a striker. He's kind of mashing it rather than really popping. But I think he's got some league average starting potential in this league with maybe just a titch more slight upside to him beyond that. And he's not a pure scheme fit for what we do mobility wise, but he could do, I think, enough. He could get the job probably done.
And when you get down here to these prospects, you're going to be a little more tolerant of not being a great scheme fit. You're just looking for good players at a certain point. And this guy's strong. He's got long arms and he has a hot motor. So I'm willing to overlook the fact that I don't think he's very good in space.
Me too.
6th round pick, if break glass in case of emergency.
I'd go higher. I would go 4th round for him because I think he's going to be elite.
Okay.
I have the floor of him, Brendan, on him is what would provide me a pathway to want to maybe pick him higher than that. I don't think he's going to have the bust factor to him very much at all, really.
Okay, that does make a good deal of sense. I just can't put him on the same level as a guy like Voorhees or Gaines.
I get it. Totally get it, especially because he's not a scheme fit either. So completely understandable.
Okay, now we have another Washington Husky. We're sending some interior offensive linemen to the NFL this year. Henry Bainivalu of the Washington Huskies, 24 years old. 6'6", 306 pounds, 34-inch arms, another guy with long arms. 10 3/4-inch hands. Did not test well, 5'5", 40, 187 10-yard split. Didn't jump very well. Didn't do the short area quickness drills very well. CBS loves him, though. They have him in the 3rd. So does the Draft Network, by the way. I don't know where that love comes from because a lot of the big boards don't have him getting drafted. The aggregate says 6th round. He did grade out pretty well in zone last year, though. 80 pass blocking grade. 1 sack allowed, 4 hits, 8 hurries. How do you feel about old Henry here?
He's hit and miss, man. It's all or nothing with him, Brendan. He's either going to lay his block and look great doing it, or he's going to completely whiff on it. When he's on, he's able to take advantage of his great arm length at 34 inches long. There's times on tape where you watch him with just one arm locking a defender out. Almost like the inverse of a long arm bull rush, a little bit is how I would call it. But when he misses, Brendan, there's often where he's just face first in the dirt, and too many of those snaps on his tape from what I saw. He doesn't really want a hand fight. He wants to lock a guy out, have it clean and easy, and then he'll maintain that lock and it's all good. But if he doesn't get that off the snap, like I said, then it's all bad. It completely goes bad. And this also bends in when we talk about pass rushers with counters. When he gets the counter move, because he's wanting to just do that lockout, here comes the counter. He can't recorrect, he can't readjust his hands back on there to get him back and latched in the right position, and the defender's past him. So I did not like the feast and famine blocking of this guy. It was too dicey. And there's a lot of quick snaps, quick throws from that Washington offense where Penix is just getting that ball peppered out before this guy has a chance for those deficiencies to really take hold at times on the tape in the way that they will at the pro level.
Yeah. What I will say about Henry is that he moved a little better than I thought. He played in space a little better than I expected. When you look at those testing numbers, you're like, oh, okay, I know what we're getting here. And then you look at him play and it's like, okay, he can move a little bit. He can play in space just a little bit. He seems to be a smart player. He seems to have a decent amount of strength, but still needs to become stronger. I think if he's going to become like a mover in the run game, not very good use of his hands. One thing I wrote here was struggles to recover from a suboptimal start to a rep. Like he can't
That's it. Yeah.
yeah. Like
He
when you watch Osiris Torrance, will have reps where he starts getting pushed back, and then he does like the frog jump to
mhm.
re-anchor, and he just
Yeah.
locks down.
Yeah.
And that's like recovering. Like, oh, I'm getting beat. Okay, I'm going to recover and still win the rep. This guy, no, not so much.
No, and it works. It's both with the feet, with the lack, and then the hands. The hands will slide wrongly, and then they start to slide it. And he can't bring them back, and it's got to be the way he has it planned out pre-snap, and then it's great. But if his plan goes to hell, and your plan's going to go to hell a lot, you got to be able to recorrect. You can't just be like, well, that didn't work, I'm beat. No, that didn't work, I'm off my feet in the ground. There's got to be a little bit more of that, the in between, right? The drawing the when you're trying to draw the neutral battle, you're trying to draw the what is it when they both win, or a draw. Like you're trying to get the draw, and there's not enough draws on his tape. it's one to this, one to that guy, one to this guy, one to that guy. That's how it feels when you're watching.
Yeah. So I do think some of the areas he struggles in could be coached up, but he's already 24. You'd want a little bit more of a finished product. I take him in like the 5th, I guess.
I got a 7th round grade on him. I don't think he's a fit for us, what we want to do, and I don't think he's going to be able to get the consistency at the next level.
Yeah, very possible. I mean, like I said, he's already 24. We're sending some old guard prospects up to the NFL this year, by the way, both of them.
Yeah, boy, we are. Hopefully, they got some young guys ready to go on that Husky line to take over for these guys.
I mean, they're not going to be as good, that's for sure. But we kept more people than I expected, so I'm not complaining.
Yeah, that's good to hear.
John Stillwell, thank you for the $20 super
What's up, John?
chat. How you doing, John? I don't think Damian Lewis fits the zone scheme we run. Any thoughts or comments? We have a lot of conversations about this, don't we?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
So where do you stand on it right now?
Well, I think to your point on that, John, I think I would ride out Damian's final year of his deal at this point and probably be likely to have him walk in free agency for the reasons that you supply. You can't bring on a new scheme and then just bring it on and keep the old players that you had for the old scheme that weren't equivalent to the new scheme and then just roll that way across the board. And I think that there was only so much, John, they could do to transition to this new scheme with new guys. It was going to take time to move out basically 5 wholly new players into your offensive line. That was going to take kind of a couple of years to get this done. But they should lean as much as they can into finding guys that are the pure scheme fits so that you can make the offense run at its best. And the big place that's missing right now, John, in this offense is the traditional screen game, the bubble screen game, the fly sweep game. All of that is basically eliminated from our playbook almost wholly right now. And a big part of that comes from the fact that your linemen can't get out into space to hit their blocks to make those plays work. And Damian is one of those guys. Even last year, in the good year that he had, there was a lot of snaps where he was not able to get out there to the block. And then his guy that gets missed comes up and makes the tackle, and the play ends up not going for anything. He's not ever going to get more mobile in that respect of things.
Yeah, it's something you can live with, but you wouldn't just because you can live with it doesn't mean you can't get better. So I'm hoping that we can get better at some point.
Yeah, I'd like to get better, but I'm fine with letting him ride out this next year and at least give us above average league play, even if it's not mobile based. And if you're taking care of the other positions in this draft, John, it's not going to be a big detriment to you at that point. But
yeah, at the very least, he's a good player.
Yeah, he does give you that, and that does provide value here, especially on a rookie deal. But once you get him outside the rookie deal, John, well, then, all bets are off on that one.
All right. 3 more right guard prospects, and then we're going to do a little bit of cleanup at the end here of guys that weren't on my radar, but the Seahawks have had in for visits. Because if they're good enough for the Seahawks to look at, they must be good enough for us to look at, right?
I suppose so.
We're going to start with Asim Richards of North Carolina, the Tar Heels. 22, 6'4", 309 pounds, 34-inch arms. Wow, long arms on some of these late round guard guys. I could not find, the only thing I could find on him was a 5-second 40 that he ran at his pro day. So it was probably like 6.4 seconds, and then they just rounded down. But that's the best I could do. The mocks mostly have him going in the 5th or 6th, but the aggregate has him going early 7th. Graded out, not great last year from PFF, like a 64.4. Good against the pass, though.
I was going to say it's the
Uh,
splits thing, isn't it? And isn't he splits is the
yeah,
passes?
yeah, he's good against the pass and really bad against the run. Did not grade out well in zone or gap. So I don't really know how they arrived to an overall grade of 64.4 if he's bad in zone and bad in gap, but they have their formulas, whatever. 3 sacks, 2 QB hits, and 15 hurries. So a little bit more than you would like there. But what do you think of a Sim Richards as a pro prospect, Brandon?
Yeah, 2,500 snaps in 3 years. He's played a lot of football, good power. When he gets, locked on, he tends to stay locked on. I like the sustainability of his blocks that it's really good in that respect, especially we're talking about the other Husky who had the kind of the opposite problem with that a second ago. But as a run blocker, he's just horrible. He's not going to be able to athletically move in space or do any of that stuff that we require within our offensive scheme at all. I just don't see how this guy would be a fit to what we want to do, nor a guy that's going to appeal to a guy like Coach Carroll, who tends to have a predilection towards liking run blockers first and foremost. I just didn't like a lot of what I saw as tape when I looked at it through the lens of what we want to do. Yeah, another scheme he might be a fit for and what he does with it, and he does bring some skill and some journeyman like play there, having started so many games and played so many snaps. But I couldn't quite get on board with him.
Yeah, I think he uses his hands well. He's pretty sticky. He's got long arms, which is going to help with the speedy rushers, but not good with leverage, bad with leverage, slow off the snap. He doesn't mirror very well, not a very good athlete. So he's passable offensive line depth. I said like 6th round would be okay.
6th, 7th round, same place. I'm in the same
Mhm.
spot.
All right. Next up, we have Chandler Zavala of North Carolina State, 24
Mhm.
years old, 6'5", 325 pounds, 32 and 3/4 inch arms, 10 and 3/8 inch hands. 5'2", 840 was the only thing I could find on him. I'm pretty sure that was from his pro day. PFF really likes him. They have him in the early 5th. Aggregate has him in the 6th. Graded out pretty well in every category except his zone last year, and only allowed 4 quarterback disruptions total on his quarterback last year. So, how do you feel about Zavala?
A lot of people really like this guy. He gets a lot of kind of pub as being a guy that wasn't invited to the combine, but might be a day 2 guy that gets taken actually. I like him a lot. Possesses a real powerful punch and the corresponding strength to match. So he'll jolt you and then he'll stay on top of you with it. If he gets his hands on you, it's over with basically. And that's rare in some of the spots I've seen in this draft with some of these linemen. If you can get around him or catch him leaning, you can make him look silly. So I think twitchier guys are going to give him some issues. There is a huge difference in how comfortable he looks moving in space or angling for reach blocks or heading out for looking for someone to block in the screen game than he does just to set up and go heads up against the man across from him. He gets lost in space, wanders around too much, doesn't do too much. But when he's mano-a-mano right there in front of a guy, he's great. In pass pro, he gets very, very wide, but you still can feel his strength. That doesn't fall away from him then at that point. He'll manhandle blitzers. I think he fits best in the scheme that doesn't ask him to move in space very often. Another guy that, as I've said on a couple of these guys, he should be in a power-based scheme, a scheme that just has him basically go up against the guy in front of you, take care of that guy in front of you, and that's your job. And he'll do that very well. In fact, I think he'll be a very good pro in that respect. If you do ask him to start doing movement-based stuff, though, he looks so out of sorts in the second level. He's just one of those guys that's looking around for who do I block? It was he you? You. No, not you. Okay, I'm gonna go over here. No, wait, no, I'm gonna go over here. A lot of that with him on tape.
Mm-hmm.
Good player though.
Yeah, I liked him. Nice little mix of power, and he does have, I think he can, for a guy of this area of the draft, can do okay in space. He's not going to be, I don't think, a complete disaster, just not great. Works well. He's got, in terms of leverage, his low center of gravity is good. I just think he doesn't latch that well. His anchor can be a little bit on the weak side, maybe. But I think he's a pretty appealing prospect here. I'd be okay in the 5th round.
Yeah, that's probably about right where I've got him at. I think I have him a little bit higher just because I think but I have him higher for a different scheme he goes to than ours. But for us in the 5th round, I'd be fine about that.
Right, one last guy here, and it's the other UCLA guard, the other one.
Mm.
Very different. This is the big boy, Antonio Mafi, UCLA, 22, 6'4", 338 pounds, 32 and 5/8 inch arms, 10 and 3/8 inch hands, ran a 5'3", 540, 21 BP reps. Some of the big boards have him in like the 5th. The aggregate has him barely getting drafted, though, right at the bottom of the 7th. Graded out pretty well last year in pretty much all categories. Did allow a lot of QB disruptions, but graded out well. So, what do you think of Muffy?
Do we put so if you so look at your PFF grade and just scroll it by guards?
Yeah.
And when we see both Mafe and Gaines on there for UCLA, what do we make of that when they're both in the top 10?
I mean, there's obviously a little bit of Chip Kelly voodoo going on there.
Yeah. I like Mafe, man. I did. I don't like him as much as Gaines because I thought Gaines was a little more comfortable as a mover. This guy's so bloody big. He's huge. But he gets it. The thing I got to say about him, Brendan, is that as much as I want to knock him as being a guy that, well, you don't move well, so I can't trust you to pull. He did pull across the scheme fine. I mean, he did move in space great. He's comfortable doing it. So even though he looks a little athletically limited on tape, just by how big a boy he is. Another guy, very wide, just extremely wide. But got the job done. And I loved it when he was doing like wham blocks and pulling across the formation. And when he hit the guy coming across the formation, like he'd send guys flying. So he's got some legit build up power to him when he's moving in on the run. So I did like I liked it. Another guy gets the job done, doesn't always get it done like beautifully or from a technique wise, looks just wonderful doing it, but will just get it done. Just so hard to get around in pass protection because he is so wide. So I did like his game. I look at him in kind of a 5th round range of things, but I'd be okay with him there.
I don't know if I could take him in the 5th because I don't think he's a great fit, but yeah, he's decent depth down around that area. I'd say 6th personally, but something like that.
Yeah, right in that area. But I think he'd be work. At least he'd give you a good backup here if that was the minimum you're getting the 6th or 7th round from him.
John Stillwell, thank you for the $20 once again, John, coming
Let's
in
go,
strong.
John.
Any thoughts on the Hawks being 30-1 to win the NFC? Feels like all the odds have congregated around 2 teams and everyone else is just kind of a distant third.
Yeah, I mean, I could understand Vegas not giving us better odds, John. It's like me and Brendan have talked about. We've certainly taken steps forward this offseason. We haven't taken steps back, but have we taken huge steps forward? Are we monumentally better when, John, when Carroll and Schneider at the end of the year say, we're far behind the Niners roster? Have we gotten far closer to their roster? I don't know that we can say that we necessarily are quite yet there. And certainly a magical draft will help you get there closer. But if I was Vegas, I would probably be giving these same kind of odds and how I was putting the pecking order together as well. Because, we have been a little bit it's been more of a half step forward than to be a full on step forward this offseason necessarily.
Yeah, I can't argue with that being the 30-1. That seems about right to me. And obviously the NFC is kind of a 2-horse race right now, it really feels like, with the Niners and Eagles.
Mm-hmm.
So everyone else is probably just distantly behind that.
And they've deserved the right to be in those spots. Both those two teams are not just on reputation, they deserve to be where they're at.
Okay, so we blew through all those prospects, and there's just a few things left over that need to be discussed here. So one thing that the Seahawks may look to do this offseason is take a tackle and convert him to guard, because this is what the Rams do. The Rams like to take tackles, move them to guard, because the tackles are going to be more mobile, more capable of playing in space, and that is the skill set that they covet down there. So it should be the skill set that we covet as well, because we're running that offense. We're running the McVay offense basically with Waldron. So therefore, it makes some sense for us to consider doing that. Now, I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this because it could be anybody, right? Like it could be a tackle that you would never have thought would move to guard because by this criteria, could be anybody. But I do want to talk briefly about a couple guys that the Seahawks have had a top 30 visit with.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there are 4 guys. 2 of them are tackles and 2 of them are guards that I just didn't pay much mind to when I was initially evaluating. So it's basically just an opportunity to do a little bit of mop-up work here. We're going to start with the big gun that we've had in so far. It's DeWand Jones, Ohio State. Phenomenal offensive line they had over there. They had 3 guys that may go in the top 2 rounds. 22 years old. This guy is a monster. He's 6'8", 374 pounds, 36 and 3/8 inch arms, some of the longest arms in the whole draft. 11 and 5/8 inch hands, the biggest hands in this whole draft, I think. Ran a 5.35 40, 1.92 10-yard split. That's the worst 10-yard split I've ever seen. Big boards mostly have him in the second. A few have him in the first. Aggregate has him going 41st overall. Graded out pretty well overall last year. Not very good in gap from PFF. Only allowed 5 QB hurries and no hits, no sacks. So there's DeWand Jones, the player, because I think most people expect him to end up playing right tackle because that's what he played in college. And he seems like he'll be fine at right tackle. But then there's DeWand Jones, the guard. Let's explore this here.
I can't quite understand it myself. It has me perplexed almost to the point of feeling like back to, well, does this mean Abe Lucas is moving into guard? Because number one, he doesn't do the mobility stuff that you're going to want to do from the interior. That's out. Number two, he's legitimately 6'8". So how is he ever going to win any leverage battle inside? Or do you just anticipate he's going to be so strong inside that he's going to be able to basically not need to win leverage? And look, he does that at tackle. He does that against defensive ends and edges. So that certainly, it's all, you saw it at the Senior Bowl all the time. He would do the move where he puts his hands up on the shoulders of the edges coming at him, and then he just pushes them down, and it's dominating. But we've never seen a guard do that inside. We've never seen a guard do that inside at 6'8" on a consistent basis. And so I'm not really sure on this one, Brendan, what to make of it. He's a great player. I enjoy watching him, and I do think he should have a first round right tackle grade. He should be a late right tackle first round taken, or in a very early second round. I think he's going to get the job done at the next level on the outside, but I'm not as certain that that's going to work inside at 6'8".
Yeah, I don't really get this one. Like, I understand that on some fundamental level that you're maybe looking at him and going, okay, he doesn't have great mobility. He's dominant against the run. Therefore, we move him into guard. I get it on that level. But like you said, he's too tall. Like DJ Fluker pulled it off, and that's like it, right?
Well, I feel like DJ was at the top of the 6'7". Like he was pushing that's as high as you possibly can maybe get away with going at. But I cannot, in my memory, Brendan, think of anybody at 6'8" operating in recent history on the inside.
And also, like, if the idea is to get guards that can move better, why would you get one of the tackles who is most atrocious at moving? Like, it feels like at this point, just take a guard. Just take a normal guard. Like, this guy's gonna have the movement skills of basically Osiris Torrance. What's the difference? So I don't really see it. I'm not really seeing the value here. So this one I don't really get. I have to admit, he's worth a second round pick for sure, just not to us.
The only thing I can think of is they think he's going to be this unbelievable interior blocker, that he'll just be so dominant because he's 374 and he's just going to be killing guys inside snap after snap. That's the only thing I can think of that's in their head. Or Abe is moving, but none of it. Yeah. All of it makes very little sense to me.
All right. The other top offensive lineman we've looked at so far is Tyler Steen of Alabama. 23 years old, 6'6", 321 pounds, 32 3/4 inch arms, 10.5 inch hands, 30-inch vert, 9 1 inch broad, 4.59 20-yard split, 31 BP bench press reps. Nice, pretty good. Some of the big boards actually have him in the third. Some have him in the fourth. The aggregate currently has him in the very late third. So late day 2 pick. Graded out decently last year. About a 70 overall. Good in zone and gap. Good against the pass. Good against the run. Pretty good Pretty good numbers there. He did allow a lot of QB hurries though,
Mhm.
19, and he allowed 2 sacks and 2 hits. So Tyler Steen, how about this one as a guard convert?
Uh, I could see it. My comp on him was actually James Carpenter. So I thought, guy out of Alabama playing left tackle at Alabama, but you see him moving to guard at the next level. I think if you want to think about this guy, think about James Carpenter at the guard position for us. And that's basically what you would get out of him. I don't think he's going to play tackle at the next level. Wide nines would just give him fits. Twitchy edges would give him fits. But I think that he's got enough power in there to handle it inside. And enough movement capability brings with it, then that could work as well too. So I can see where they're going with on this because he's a little heavy. He's a heavy-footed tackle, but he would be a fine guard as far as the movement goes in there.
Yeah, this one I like. This one makes sense. He's a pretty decent athlete for a guy this big, understands pass protection pretty well. He's good with his hands, moves well, got enough strength to anchor too. So it's not like he
Mm-hmm.
sacrifices one too much for the other. I do think he's inconsistent with his technique. Sometimes he opens the gate a little too early and gets beaten. But these are things he can probably take some time to work on if we draft him because he may not be a day one starter. So I'm not too worried about that. Sometimes he loses his balance. He can get bull rushed occasionally. Um, this one makes sense to me. I would say third round is fine.
Third round would be good for me too as well. I think I'd even go. There's even a consideration here of a late second because I think this guy's another high floor, low ceiling guy that you get. I mean, I really feel like the Carpenter one would be like a pure comparison to make, right? Where Carpenter wasn't a great player or even average, a little bit above average, but you're getting that at the late second round point. That's probably about the value you can expect in this particular draft.
All right, two more guys. These guys, I believe, are more expected to be guards anyway. Although this first guy, maybe not so much. Depends on who you ask. It's Jordan McFadden of the Clemson Tigers. 23 years old, 6'2", 303 pounds, 34-inch arms. So he sounds more like a tackle when you describe him like that. Also ran a sub 540, 1.74 10-yard split. Didn't jump very well at all, 28.5 inches, I guess. But little bit of mobility there indicated. One big board actually has him in the third, but the aggregate has him in the sixth. Graded out fairly well from PFF last year, unless he was asked to do gap stuff. Allowed 13 quarterback disruptions in his 12 games. How do you feel about Jordan McFadden?
There's some similarities here a little bit with Steen, another guy that is going to, I think, benefit moving inside because you remove him from the limitations that he has to deal with at the tackle position. Again, being the twitchy, edgy rushers that are going to give him issues out there. Interesting, he's 6'2", but does have the 34-inch long arms. So he has a little bit of that odd kind of build to him a little bit in that respect that would work nicely. I think that's like how you'd like your guards built inside a little bit, is a little bit of that under. You're going to win the leverage war, but still have the length in there to lock it out. He moves pretty well. Another guy doesn't move great as a tackle, but you move him from tackle to guard, and now the movement capabilities go from being kind of a slight minus at tackle to being at least a net average moving him to guard. So I think he'll work well with there. So he's got the natural build, I think, to sustain with that. He's got some good power. He's got some wow moments on tape when watching him that I liked at him as tackle that would stand out to me. So I think he would fit. I think he'd be fit the skill set. And I think this kid's got some top end potential moving him into guard. I think there's some legitimate, almost like Pro Bowl like potential with him and moving him to guard that even the other two guys we just talked about maybe don't see that as much with their height on that, with their ceiling. This guy, maybe not as much the floor, but the ceiling is there with him on the other end of it.
Yeah. I agree. I like him a lot too. I do think he's a work in progress though. His technique when he's on the move, like he loses his balance a lot. Like there's some work to be done here for sure. There's
Yeah.
definitely work to be done. So I don't think you have to do it until like the fifth round. And I would think that would be great. I'd be okay in the fourth, I guess. Something like that.
Yeah, I think I've got a fourth round, late. Yeah, I got like about a fourth. I really liked him actually. I got a late third round grade on him, so
Mm,
I like this guy quite a bit, and I think I like him. I trust in him at the guard level in a way that's almost not like Skoronski esque, but like trusting in that I think he's going to transition there really nicely.
yeah. I can't quite get there, but I do like him. I would really love to get him in the fifth. but I would be totally fine in the fourth. Third might be pushing it a little bit, but I do like him. So I don't think I would be upset.
Yeah, it's understandable. He's just one of those guys I would definitely gravitated towards with the tape I watched.
Okay, we got one guy left here, just one guy left, and this guy's more of a traditional guard, I think. This one's a little interesting. It's Anthony Bradford of LSU, 22 years old, 6'4", 332 pounds, 33.5-inch arms, 9.5-inch hands. Tested decently, 5'08", 40, 174, 10-yard split. 34 bench press reps as well. Had some other okay testing scores. CBS loves him. They have him in the third, but the other big boards mostly had him in like the sixth. And the aggregate actually pulls him all the way down to the late seventh. Graded out okay last year against the run, but pretty badly against the pass. Allowed 4 sacks, 3 hits, and 5 hurries for LSU. So, yeah, Bradford, little less atypical of the position, I think. So what do you think about him on the Seahawks?
It's kind of another one that doesn't quite, this one makes not quite sense if we put him in a category on this one again that they're meeting with. Big, lumbering right guard. He is strong. He is long. He is wide. He brings some of the natural that you can't teach stuff to the position that I like. No one's going to overpower him in pass protection at all.
Yeah.
Nobody. But quick, twitchy, bendy guys will give him fits, even on the inside as a run blocker, in my opinion. Or not run blocker, but as a pass protector, in my opinion. I think he is a better run blocker than he is a pass protector. He's really going to lean on the length and the power. The thing that I struggle with mainly on him, especially in the movement-based stuff, Brendan, is that he is a hammer and every problem is a nail. And what I mean by that is he has this, when he gets to the second level, he wants to go out there and hit that block, and I'm going to put it in there, and I'm going to put it down in there. And sometimes you just got to get the block laid, my guy. Just get it laid, get in front of your guy. Just, you're a big body dude, you're wide. Just use that width to your advantage. Didn't do that, I thought, as much on tape in that respective things, despite being a plus run blocker. And guys got used to him trying to drive out there 100 miles an hour all the time. And they could slip around those blocks and get him out in front a little bit too much. You can teach this stuff. It's a little bit within that point, but the bottom line is he's not super athletic and isn't really comfortable moving in space. So why is Seattle meeting with him when that wouldn't seem to be a fit for what they do in their scheme?
Maybe they're moving him to nose tackle.
Maybe he'd have some strong hands in there.
Yeah, so like you said, big and strong, dominant in the run game, moves the line of scrimmage with his strength. He anchors well, doesn't stop till the whistle blows, but no lateral agility, no lateral movement, gets beat by speed. Also only started 17 games at the college level, not even a season and a half, which is not great in terms of a ready to go type thing.
Yeah.
So, I mean, 6th round and on, I can't say no, because he is a pretty decent prospect, but I don't really see the excitement behind it.
I don't either. And especially if we're talking about through the lens of, does the guy fit to what we're going to want our offensive lineman to do in this scheme? And just not really. No.
All right, so that's everybody. We got one super chat here. John Stillwell, once again, with the
Woo-hoo!
$10 dono.
Thank you,
You seem
John.
to like to pick up players who have NFL pedigree. Any of those players out there this year? There are a couple.
Ooh, yeah.
You've got a couple guys we're going to talk about next show on Saturday. You have Trevius Hodges Tomlinson, who is, yes, related to LaDainian Tomlinson. You have Joey Porter Jr., obviously. You have Andre Carter II. Probably a couple others that are more like distantly related as well, but those are the main ones to my knowledge.
Yeah, I was trying to think about, there's a distant one that I was trying to think of, and now I can't. I'm spacing on it. But I think that is all you've got for other connections. I think you got those ones pretty good there, man. Those are the only ones I think we're sitting on right now that are.
Yeah. I mean, I think there is something to be said about guys with NFL pedigree. I do think it helps.
I do, John. I've been a big guy having faith in the past. And look, we've gotten the benefits of it. Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf, certainly those are guys that have that pedigree. And it seems like every year those guys that do come out are able to get a little ahead of the ball and have a little bit better of a chance for success. I certainly, John, would look to target those guys. / if I have a guy like that, if you're going to think about whether you look at it as a detriment or as something that you put as a plus column on the player, I would more often than not always be putting it as a plus column on the player. It seems like those former NFL pros as fathers prepare their kids.
Mhm.
Bosa brothers, right? You had the Matthews. How many? A couple Matthews played.
Yeah.
There's quite a long history of this in the league. Hell, we had Lofa Tatupu was a second generation, one of our better middle linebackers that ever played for Seattle.
Yeah, I want James Harrison's kids, whatever they end up doing. Those kids are going to be crazy.
Oh, they are, and
Like,
strong probably. I'm
yeah, did you
guessing.
did you read the story about when they got like participation trophies for like their
Oh
youth
yeah,
football league,
he
and
threw him out.
I think he like destroyed them with one of those saws. What are those
Yeah,
the tables where you have the saw? I don't know what they're called. Table saw. I don't know.
yeah, that's right. That sounds very James Harrison like, by the way, too.
Yeah.
So, that definitely tracks and adds up. Yeah, I do too. Hey, I'll tell you what, Joey Porter Jr. is going to be. We'll be talking about this next week, but he's a dogged guy too. He's got
I'm a
that.
fan. I'm a fan.
Yeah, he's a fun player to watch.
Mhm. All right. So I think that's it. I think we went through the interior offensive line really well. There are other guys who we may end up taking to move to guard, but that's a kettle of sushi I'm not going to open up right now.
Yeah,
We did a good job, I think.
I think we got him too. We
Yeah.
we knocked out some guys. There's some real interesting names here throughout the whole draft. So Seattle
Oh
does
yeah.
not need to feel impelled to have to jump on the Osiris Torrance or Avilia. They can grab when the time is right in this
Mhm.
draft. And like I was saying about the Oluwatani and John Games or a Tipman in the fourth, and you can do this. You can get some starters out of this maybe a little bit later on than some people are kind of thinking that they have to go with in this draft to find them.
So, thank you everybody for coming out tonight and hanging out with us as we go through these linemen. We got one show left in this vein, and it's going to be Saturday afternoon at 3 o'clock. We're going to do the defensive backs of the draft. There are some interesting ones, and this is an area we've had success in typically drafting defensive backs. So we will be going over it next week, starting at Saturday, starting at 3 o'clock Pacific. Thank you everybody for coming out once again, Brandon, and I want to thank you for coming out and doing this with me.
My pleasure, man. Had a great
Mhm.
time as always.
And we're just over a week away. Just over a week away. So, I mean, there's only so many different ways you can say it, but you still got to say it.
Gotta
You got to make sure you let them know
let him know.
as we move closer to this monumental moment in Seahawks franchise history. You got to get behind them. You
They're
got to
gonna forget if
support
you
them.
don't, Brennan. They forget,
You got to say, go Hawks.
Go Hawks.